بسم الله وبالله وعلى ملة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your host, Hassan al-Qadri, and we are here with another podcast, the Purified Truth Podcast. Our guest has been on the podcast before. It was very interesting the last time we had him on. This time it will be a different topic, different way of dealing with this topic, inshallah. He's a bit different from last time. He's one of the teachers in the Hawza in Qom. He is a specialist in al-Kalām. He is someone that's teaching currently logic and al-Sahif al-Sajjadiyya. My dear brother and friend, Shaykh Shabbir al-Lawati. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna. How are you? How's things?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Everything's well, alhamdulillah.
You're a bit used to England this time, شوية.
Yeah, it's better. Easy.
شوية أكو. You're a bit more with the weather and everything. This time the weather's a bit better than last time.
It is better than last time.
The difference from last time, you had the Omani hat. This time you're wearing the turban, alhamdulillah. لباس التقوى. Allah يحفظكم. Sayyidina, Shaykhna, afwan, I'm going to get straight into it. I don't want to waste time because I think the podcast might be a long one. Now, the way I want to do it is it's going to be more of a debate than a discussion. We will go back and forth. We'll go easy in the first few questions to get things going, to see where you're at, and then we'll go from there, inshallah. Okay, so first question, what is al-Kalām? If you was able to explain it briefly, what is al-Kalām?
See, if we got back to the earlier on Kalam books, we will not usually find a specific and clarified definition for al-Kalām. Actually, we might not even find usually, they do not mention usually a definition for al-Kalām. But you can see what the books talks about and what are the subjects that are mentioned in the book and the ways they research the subjects and talk about it.
So are you saying, by the way, Shaykhna, forgive me, I will stop you from here from time to time, because from my understanding, they do define al-Kalām.
Earlier books?
Not the earlier books, but in later on scholars, they do define.
I'm talking about the earlier books.
A lot of them contradict, by the way, from what I've realized.
Yeah, sometimes you will see ta'arif al-mawjud bima huwa mawjud. You'll see ta'arif that says that al-Kalām researches about the topics of our doctrines of in a specific religion and so on. There are some definitions mentioned later on.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the books, not the very early stage of al-Kalām in the time of the Ma'sūmīn salawatullah alayhim, because there was al-Kalām in the time of Ma'sūmīn, and not even the stage after it. Okay. Which books were written, and many books were written. It was already an established science at that time, an established part of writing and researching at that time, and it was something that they specialized in. Even at the time of Ma'sūmīn, he's mutakallim. You can find it in the books of Rijal. Fulan kana mutakalliman.
Sahih.
He was a mutakallim. So even at that time, it was not usually defined as a science, but they did not define it probably because it was very obvious what they do research in al-Kalām, which was actually understanding and proving the doctrines of religion and researching about what the doctrines of religion are based upon. Like sometimes they'll have a whole section talking about causality and different kinds of causes. Why? It's not a doctrine. You do not have to believe that causes this and that. But understanding what causality means affects on your understanding of some of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes, or affects your understanding about how you can be the doer.
Okay.
As it's mentioned in some translations of Kashf al-Murad. So generally they'll study the doctrines of religion and what are the doctrines of religion based upon, and sometimes some details regarding the doctrines of religion. This is basically what they have researched about in al-Kalām. So if you want to define it, you can define it in this way. So ʿilm al-Kalām is the study or the science that studies the doctrines of religion and the subjects that are directly related to the doctrines of religion and the doctrines of religion are based upon them.
So would you say every book that's discussing Aqidah, let it be whatever topic of Aqidah, is realistically ʿilm al-Kalām? Would you say that's a correct understanding?
It is a correct understanding, but regarding, there will be, we'll probably talk about it later on, but some might say that philosophy books are also study Aqidah, but there's difference between this and that. We'll talk about it maybe later if we had a chance.
Okay, so this is my next question. What is the differences between ʿilm al-Kalām and philosophy? But I want to also, I would like for you to also explain not just the differences, but is there any similarities? And where does the differences come? If you can just explain that to us.
All right.
Inshallah.
It'll be a continuation of the first question also. So to understand ʿilm al-Kalām better, we let's take an example. Some ʿilm al-Kalām books divide the subjects in ʿilm al-Kalām into two parts. Al-Jalil في علم الكلام وال-Latīf في علم الكلام. Actually, المقالات is an example for that also. Al-Jalil في علم الكلام and al-Latīf في علم الكلام. So Al-Jalil في علم الكلام would be directly the more important. Also in Kashf al-Murad at the beginning he mentions that there are two parts, Al-Jalil and al-Latīf, and he differentiates between them. In al-Latīf he mentions some not clear. Actually al-Latīf you can translate it as subtle, the subtle parts of al-Kalam, the subtle subjects in al-Kalam, the ones that are not very clear, and the doctrines of religion can be based upon some of them. So the al-Jalil fi al-Kalam are directly the main doctrines that you study in the books of Kalam. Al-Latīf, the part that says subtle, the subtle subjects in al-Kalam, al-Latīf fi al-Kalam, are somehow close to what's mentioned in the philosophy books as the research in al-Umur al-Āmmah, the general things. See, philosophy actually studies, as they usually say, al-wujud bima huwa mawjud, existence from the aspect of it being existence in itself, not something else, not another aspect. So you're studying al-wujud in its sense, not something else about al-wujud. So when they say that they study al-wujud in this very general sense, they study the huge and general ideas that is connected to existence in itself, not to some parts of existence, as they say. Many subjects that they mention in this section of philosophy are close to what is mentioned in al-Latīf fi ilm al-Kalām. Like an example.
So that's the similarity.
That's the similarities. So I'll mention the similarities at the beginning. So they study, let's say, with the example you mentioned earlier on, causality. They study causality in the general part of philosophy. We also study causality in al-Latīf fi ilm al-Kalām, in ilm al-Kalām. They'll study what existence mean. We'll study what existence means in there. They'll study al-Jawāhir wal-A'rāḍ. We'll study al-Jawāhir wal-A'rāḍ there also. Many ideas are studied here and there. But some ideas can be studied. The reason behind studying these ideas in philosophy is understanding reality as it is. The reason behind studying these subjects in ʿilm al-Kalām is that the doctrines that we want to study, the proofs upon them, and is it true or not, is based upon these ideas. So you have to understand those ideas to understand the proofs and see that is the proof true or false.
Okay.
So the motive behind those and those is different, and it can happen in different sciences. Many different sciences can have similar subjects, but these subjects got introduced into this science because of a different motive than it being introduced in another science, whilst the subject is still the same. The subject is still the same.
Yeah.
So these are some similarities. Also in the specific doctrines of religion, like if we study the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we study that if we want to prove that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, you'll study that in philosophy and you'll also study it in ilm al-Kalām. You'll study it in ilm al-Kalām.
Do you study in the same way?
Some similar ways, and some proofs are similar also. But you study it in ʿilm al-Kalam because it's a doctrine of the religion. It's an important doctrine that you want to study it and you want to see if it's proof of true or false. But you study it in philosophy. Sorry, I cut you on your speech and on your talk. You study it in philosophy because you want to understand reality as it is.
Okay.
So the motive and the cause behind this subject being included in ʿilm al-Kalam and philosophy is different. But the similarity is that the subject is similar. Sometimes the proofs that are mentioned in the philosophy books are different from the proofs that are mentioned in Kalami books. These have different reasons. First reason is that the philosophy books were written in a different siyaq, different context. Thank you. Different context than the Kalami books. So the ideas that were there were different than the ideas that were there. But when they got connected, some ideas moved from here to there. Also, another reason behind it, which will start us to talk about the differences between Ilm al-Kalam and philosophy, is that there are some, we can say, basic ideas or primary ideas in philosophy that are accepted, which are not accepted in Kalam, or accepted in Kalam and not accepted in philosophy, that affects the differences in how they treat their subjects, how do they research their subjects, and also on the conclusions that they get to on these subjects.
Okay, so just I want to break it down. So we've spoken similarities, we've spoken a bit on differences. What you mentioned now, is that the only differences?
No, I just started on talking about differences.
So
there are many differences.
Okay.
We'll get to it point by point.
Okay,
So if you want to start by the differences, see,
I want you to try to simplify it. So those that are watching it, I want them to be able to understand and grasp what we are trying to say.
Okay, let's take it step by step.
Yeah, like give it point by point.
Okay. So the first difference, or the first cause of differences, let's mention it this way, is that philosophy at the end is based on what is mentioned in the logic, which is the usual studied logic, which is in the Ibn Sina books, Farabi books, which is taken from the Greek logic. There are some additions that they added, but it's based on some ideas that we're taking from the Greek
principles
logic.
From them.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of these main ideas is that they study the third division, or the third division in some sense, and they have different ways that they divided logic studies into. There is a part of logic studies or subjects which is called the 5 crafts, صناعات الخمس.
Okay.
The 5 crafts. The first craft is the craft of, they mention it as Burhān.
Burhān, okay.
What they mean in the craft of Burhān is, we want to study here the way that you choose your premises to get to conclusions, to get you to 100%
correct understanding and conclusion.
100% certainty about the conclusion,
okay,
and 100% certainty that the whatever contradicts the conclusion is wrong.
Okay,
that's what they say.
Okay, so let me just let me stop you there. Would we say that epistemology, is that what we're talking about? So methodology, al-manhaj?
Yes, it's a methodology.
Okay,
it's the methodology they use.
What's the difference between al-Kalam's methodology and the philosophers?
Yeah, I'll finish explaining this part and then I'll show it. So in the craft of Burhān, they say that we want to study what ways that we can use, what paths that you can use in istidlal, in gathering the premises that we need, and choosing the premises that can get us to the conclusions that we need. For the conclusions to be in the way that I mentioned earlier on. They name it al-yaqeen al-mudha'af. Multiplicated, yaqeen is certainty. Multiplicated certainty, 100% certainty. So how can we get to that?
Okay.
Within that sense, here the difference starts. Also in Ilm al-Kalam, they want 100% certainty. But here in the study of logic, they said that to get to 100% certainty, you cannot base your proofs on naql, on narrations and verses.
All the philosophers say that?
That's the usual principle that is mentioned in logic books.
Yeah, I know, but
there might be one here and one there that have argued the premise mentioned there.
We've got some Shia scholars that are philosophers, but they have engaged with the Turath.
Yeah, they will engage with Turath. They will engage with narrations of Ahlul Bayt and also Quranic verses.
But they're saying this is not enough.
This is not enough, and this is not Burhān.
Okay.
This will help you with the craft of rhetoric. This will help you with the craft of jadal. The craft of argumentation, but it will not build a burhan which gets you to the multiplicated certainty that they search about in philosophy studies.
Okay, and the
mutakallimin say that the Qur'an and narrations can, not always, but they can get us 100%
I don't want to
certainty.
get into it, Shaykhna. Yeah, but just a quick question of a yes or no. But with the mutakallimin, they wouldn't rely on khabar wahid. It has to be mutawatir, correct?
Either mutawatir or it has other signs that can get you to 100% certainty.
With the text?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only tawatur, yani. Tawatur is one of the ways that can get you to 100% certainty that this actually, the Ma'sum said it, but there are other ways that can get you to 100% certainty also. Yani.
Of course, yeah. These are different. Okay.
Definitely.
No, I just wanted to ask. Okay.
So this is one difference between philosophy and kalam in building their proofs.
Okay, so wow. So
relying on thaqalain.
Okay.
Qur'an and hadith and building the proofs in your aqeedah.
So would they say this about the Qur'an also?
Yes, definitely. That dhawahir al-Qur'an and the verses of the Qur'an are not enough. You cannot rely on it to build a burhan.
Ajib.
You cannot rely on it to build a burhan.
Ajib.
This is the first difference. Second difference, we're still with what they mentioned in logic. Second difference is that they mention in their detailed studies in Sana'at al-Burhan that you have to go in your proof from the cause to the effect, from the illah to the ma'lul. If there is a causality between the premises and the conclusion, you have to go from the cause to the effect for you to get let's say a real burhan. As an example, sometimes you can say, I saw the smoke. Let's say it's a specific kind of smoke that actually can get to 100% certainty that it came from a flame. You get from the smoke to the flame. This movement, intellectual movement, yani.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
This movement is a movement from the effect to the cause. They say this is Burhān al-Innī. It is a Burhān, but it's not the Burhān that they actually want to get to. There is another kind of Burhān, which they call as Burhān al-Limmi.
Al-Limmi.
Al-Burhān al-Limmi.
Explain that to us.
It means you go from the cause to the effect. Where can you see that in their books? I'll just mention one example to understand the idea. I'm sorry we're getting a bit deep, but to understand the differences, we have to
is good. This is
comprehend the basis of it, actually, to get to a good understanding. So they say it in proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They usually say that mutakallimin went and used Burhān al-Huduth. Mutakallimin used a proof that is named by al-Huduth, which is based on the origination and that the word that we live in has a beginning. They usually say hadith is something that were not there, didn't exist, and then it existed. It is not a very accurate explanation. Hadith means...
Philosophers are saying this.
No, even some mutakallimin, when they explain what hadith means, they usually mention it like this. But they actually mean that hadith is what has a beginning in time, in existence. And it has a point of beginning. Before that point, if there was time, it will not have been existed. But it's not based upon that there has to be time before it. If there was time, it would not have existed. If there was not time, at the end, it has a beginning in time. Yani the hadith means that this thing has a point of origin.
Had to
in
begin
time.
some
Had to begin at some time. So Mutakallimin used Burhān al-Huduth, which says that this world that we live in has a beginning. So it has a point of beginning. So whatever, and then they add a premise, which is whatever has a point of beginning, whatever is hadith, it has a cause. And then they go study the cause, which they prove later on that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after proving some attributes. Philosophers, starting from Ibn Sina, and it's not Avicenna as they say in English, and it's not something later on. Yani. He said that this is a way that you can prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this is an Innī way. You go from the effect to the cause. You study the world that we live in, and you show that it has an beginning and time, and then you prove the existence of its cause. This is an Innī. We have to go to a limmi Burhān, and that is actually the real Burhān, the Burhān of Siddiqeen and so on. And then he introduced a different proof of existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then later on Mullah Sadra said that we can have a better Burhān, and he showed his explanation of Burhān Siddiqeen and so on. And their explanation of Burhān Siddiqeen, as they tried to show that it goes from the existence itself, which is, as they say, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it proves, or he's saying that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs a bit of an explanation. I'll just say it right now and leave it as it is. The listener or the one who watches the episode can then read later on more upon this subject. So they start from the existence itself, which they show that it includes, or it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you go to the effect, which is the world. So they say this is Burhān al-Limmi, but what is mentioned in Kalami books and also in Qur'an. أَفَلَا يَنظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ, the different verses in the Qur'an that starts from whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created to get you from the creation to the creator. They say this is Burhān al-Innī. It's not wrong, but it's not the work of Siddiqeen. The Siddiqeen start from the cause to go to the effect. So this is another difference from between philosophy and
how they
Kalam.
approach Burhān.
And how they approach Burhān. This is part of the differences and part of the cause of many differences between philosophy and Kalam. One of the main differences between philosophy.
Would you say, sorry, Shaykh,
Sorry.
would you say these differences on how we approach epistemology, the methodology, or the Burhān itself, the proof itself, is what causes the conclusions of the mutakallim, the theologian, and the philosopher to come to different conclusions?
Yeah, this is one of
the big things.
Yes.
Okay.
It has a huge effect on the differences. Like let's take another example. Burhān al-Nadhm, which is called in English studies as the argument of design. Thank you. The argument of design is actually an example of Burhān al-Innī. That's why in philosophy they say that this is not a perfect Burhān. It's not a limmi Burhān. But in Kalam it's fully accepted to prove the knowledge, to prove the attribute of knowledge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the creator of this world. So in Kalam, now we have explained what's mentioned in Burhān in philosophy. In Kalam they say that we should base definitely all of our proofs on 100% certainty. But these are not requirements. As long as the proof is based on true premise or true premises, the conclusion is true. And it is 100% true. We do not need to make it limmi or inni. If the premise is true, the conclusion is true. So being a limmi Burhān or being an inni Burhān is not a requirement for mutakallimin. Even the narrations, even the Qur'an, sometimes they accept that this narration is a khabar al-wahid and it does not get us to 100%. Or this narration, even though it is mutawatir, the understanding of it, grasping the conclusions from it, does not get us to 100%. Sometimes it does not. But when it does, we can accept it as long as it got us to 100% certainty. That's what we want. So in Kalam, these are not requirements, accepted requirements for proofs. This, as I mentioned earlier, this is a part of what made the difference between Kalam and philosophy. And actually, it's a possibility. I'm not saying this was with 100% certainty, so it's not a Burhān, but it's a possibility that the reason behind what is said upon ʿilm al-Kalam, that ʿilm al-Kalam is the whole ʿilm al-Kalam is built, is a science built for argumentation and for doing just arguments to.
That's actually one of the definitions. I can't remember which scholar he says that's one of the definitions of how ʿilm al-Kalam came to be called ʿilm al-Kalam.
Yeah. If you go on later on ʿilm al-Kalam books like al-Maqāsid and al-Mawāqif and so on, you will find this mentioned. But this is after what al-Farabi mentioned. It all gets back to what al-Farabi mentioned. Al-Farabi is the first one that we found who mentioned that ʿilm al-Kalam is jadali. When he said jadali, he mentioned it within the context of philosophy and logic books. When al-Farabi said jadali, remember, Farabi is a philosopher.
Yeah.
And Farabi is one of the main writers in logic books. And his logic books are very important. And he said that ʿilm al-Kalam jadali in that sense. cilm al-Kalam is what is written in within صناعات الخمس that we mentioned earlier on, the 5 crafts. Cilm al-Kalam is within the craft of argumentation, as we mentioned. Not the craft of Burhān. Why?
So he kind of belittles it a bit.
That's why. But why did he do that? In cilm al-Kalam, you accept Qur'ān and Hadith as 100% certainty, right?
Yeah.
We do not accept it in al-Burhān. So it's not Burhān. We have to find another craft for it. So it's craft. It goes into a craft of argumentation, not the craft of Burhān. See, this is how Farabi thinks. That's why I'm saying that probably Farabi said that cilm al-Kalam is jadali because of what they require in Burhān. And what do they require in Burhān does not apply on cilm al-Kalam as the mutakallimin want, because we said mutakallimin do not see those as requirements. So in the context of Farabi's mind, it's not Burhān, so it has to be jadal. So it goes into the craft of argumentation. Later on, they said that the cause and what we want to study in cilm al-Kalam is the jadal. What do you mean by jadal? Iqnā' al-khasm. That's that's what they want behind jadal. If you want from argumentation just to get the one opposing you to accept what you're saying. So here I'll ask you a question. Why do mutakallimin argue even though they are from the same sect? Shaykh al-Mufid and Sayyid al-Murtada, 2 of our main scholars in cilm al-Kalam in Shi'i studies. And they're both fully accepted. They're very huge scholars. Ridwanullahi alayhim. They have different ideas on some of our doctrines. Al-Irada in Shaykh al-Mufid's book is different than al-Irada in Sayyid al-Murtada's books. Why did they have a different of understanding? If their whole concept from cilm al-Kalam and all what they wanted behind cilm al-Kalam was to get the khasm, to get the opposing one to accept, they should start from the same point.
Yeah.
But they have different understanding, because what cilm al-Kalam studied were the doctrines of religion. Sayyid al-Murtada accepted some proofs, Shaykh al-Mufid accepted different proofs. So they were true to what they write. That's why if you see different Kalami books, at the beginning or at the end, they usually mention this. Sometimes at the beginning of the book, sometimes at the ending of the book. Do not accept what we wrote unless the proofs were accepted. Unless you see that what we mentioned from the premises and how to go from the premises to conclusions were true and were right. If their goal is just to get the opposing one to accept what they were saying, why do they mention these sentences? Why do they mention that we base this proof on these premises, which are primary premises and obvious premises? And if someone debates them, they usually use this wording. لا يكلم. Shouldn't be even spoken for, sorry. Because they say we are basing our proofs on things that should be very obvious and very clear. We're trying as much as we can to do that, to get to a true understanding about these doctrines. So they are true to themselves. We see mutakallimin change sects all the time. Ibn Qibah, he was not a Shi'i and then he became a Shi'i. He was a mutakallim.
Yeah.
So the whole point behind ʿilm al-Kalam is the study of religion. If your motive is to get the opposing one to accept what you're saying only, you have a problem with yourself.
That would be jadal.
Yes. And this is a problem. Our teacher, Sayyid Ali Abul Hassan, used to say, if I remembered well, he used to say, it's a marad, it's a sickness. You have to fix your sickness.
I remember there's a riwayah, and I think the last chapter of Kitab al-Tawheed by Shaykh Saduq.
Yes.
And it's one, I think it's even the last chapter and the last hadith in that chapter, where it talks about jadal, and Rasulullah talks against it, that your deen shouldn't be built upon just arguing and debating. Entering religion in that way will only be destructive.
Yes.
100%.
And actually, there is a narration that our Imam Salawatullahi alayhi used to teach his companions how to do how to work with argumentations regarding doctrines. Imam Salawatullahi alayhi said to one of them, I remember the meaning, I don't remember the exact wordings of the narration. He said, تضرب حقا بباطل. You're using some true and you're using some false ways to get to what's true, but you're using some false statements. And that was a mistake that the Imam Salawatullahi alayhi told him about. When he
telling the companions about their mistakes.
Yeah, he used to talk to one of them, and he told each one of them. So it was a majlis that the Imam Salawatullahi alayhi's companions, each one of them took his time to do the argumentation with the one who entered the majlis. And then after that, Imam Salawatullahi, it's in al-Kafi.
After that, al-Hakam, my memory says.
The last one was Hisham.
Okay.
The last one was Hisham. The one who used false was Mu'min al-Taq. So I didn't want to mention his name. So anyways, he's one of the true companions of Imam Salawatullahi alayhi. It was a mistake. Imam was teaching him. So each one of them tried to do the argument, and then Imam Salawatullahi alayhi used to teach them, this was the mistake that you did, this is the mistake. So he said to Mu'min al-Taq, تضرب حقا بباطل, if I'm not mistaken. You're using sometimes false premises, so don't. But then when he said Hisham, it's when he talked to Hisham, he said, no, you were using only true premises. And he
was young.
He was young. And if I'm not mistaken, it's in the same narration, it's mentioned ولم تخطط لحياه, and his beard were not
he hasn't fully grown out.
Fully grown, well grown. So and he said to Hisham that you've used your understanding of narrations while you built up your proofs. So it was a good thing that Hisham did that, and that's, anyways, that's another debate.
You know. By the way, a bit of a side point. I remember one of my teachers. I remember about 10 years ago. He did durus. He taught us the principles of debate from the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt, and it was profound. Honestly, I think it's recorded. If we're able to put it into a book, it's unbelievable. But yeah, Shaykhna, continue. I don't want to stay too long on this question.
All right, let's mention one or two examples on the
I'll say one example, Shaykhna.
All right.
One more example, because there is a question related to what you just said. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on it.
All right. One of the main examples that can be mentioned in the conclusions.
We want another difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now in the conclusions, I'll not go on the basis. I've mentioned an example from the basis. I'll mention an example in the conclusions.
Okay.
One of the main examples in the conclusions is the difference between philosophy and kalam in qidam al-ālam.
Okay.
So does the existence other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a beginning or not? Mutakallimin says obviously everything has a beginning, everything is bound with time and space, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And the philosophers?
Philosophers says no, because the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates and causes is directly connected to his existence. So if he exists, the effect exists. So it does not have a point of origin, because if it had a point of origin, Allah will have a point of origin also. So this is a huge difference.
Wow.
Between kalam and philosophy. It is mentioned as a difference usually. That's why some philosophers, and he's actually a philosopher right now, يعني in Qom, he has a different understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deeds. And when he argued with philosophers in this understanding, some philosophers said that this is a mutakallim, he's not a philosopher, because it is actually a main difference in understanding the doctrines between philosophy and kalam.
Briefly, because we don't want to stay too much on this, yeah?
Okay.
What caused the philosophers to come to that belief that, existence existed, it always existed?
Briefly,
the
understanding,
it's a bit hard.
the way that they understand ikhtiyar. They usually translate ikhtiyar as free will. I don't like this translation much, but free will.
The Arabic language
ability to
compared
choose.
to English is very hard. But okay, the ability to choose.
Ability to
free
choose
will.
or free will.
Let's call it free will.
So the way they understand ikhtiyar is different than the way that mutakallimin understand ikhtiyar. Mutakallimin understand ikhtiyar in a way, they say that if someone or some cause is mukhtar, I'll summarize it. If some cause is mukhtar, it means that he can exist without the effect existing, and he can cause the effect to exist at any point in time that he wants, without anything within him changing. And that is what ikhtiyar is for them. Philosophers say no. It's either a complete cause or no. If it's a complete cause, the effect is existing. If it's not a complete cause, the effect do not exist. So since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a complete cause, the effect is always existing.
That's
what they call faith. But the word faith is sometimes used in another context, yani. But when philosophers use it, they use it in this meaning.
Okay. So we're not talking about faith al-Kashani.
No.
Okay, so just briefly, we spoke about Greek philosophy. So we see many individuals, they refuse to engage in al-Kalām. We see statements from like Ibn Taymiyyah and so forth, where they say this is because they say based upon that it stems from or comes from or originates from Greek philosophy. Do you think this claim is true? So a lot of the principles within al-Kalām or al-Kalām itself is originated from Greek philosophy, and this is why they don't engage in it. What would you say to that?
Two things.
And is the claim true?
Yeah, I'll answer it with 2 points. First point, let's accept the claim. Let's accept the claim and say that many ideas came into al-Kalām, which happened actually after Khaja Nasiruddin al-Tusi and al-Allāma al-Hilli. Many of the subjects that were researched in philosophy books, in the way that philosophy researched them, entered Kalami books more than before. That's
Same
why
thing with Ghazali in his refutation of the philosophers.
Maqasid and Tahafut.
Yeah,
but still in Ghazali's time, see, after Fakhr al-Razi, everything changed.
Oh, yeah.
Before Fakhr al-Razi, they used to treat philosophy subjects and talk about it and debate it, but their Kalami books stayed in a specific arrangement. Their subjects stayed in a specific arrangements, and there were some main subjects had reoccurrence in Kalami books.
Okay.
But after Fakhr al-Razi in Ash'ari studies, Ash'ari Kalami studies,
Ashāʿira?
yeah,
Okay.
it changed. Everything changed. But I'll not talk about their books. Let's talk about our books. After Fakhr al-Razi, Khaja Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, since he refuted many of what Fakhr al-Razi wrote, and Fakhr al-Razi wrote محصل المتقدمين محصل الكلام عند المتقدمين والمتأخرين, something like that. I forgot the exact name of the book. الخواجة نصير الدين wrote نقد المحصل or ترخيص المحصل. He wrote an explanation on إشارات وتنبيهات for Ibn Sina, Abi Sanna. خواجة نصير الدين wrote another explanation for إشارات and refuted one Fakhr al-Din al-Razi wrote, and so on. So since Khaja Nasir al-Din were looking so much into Fakhr al-Razi's book, and after him also Allam al-Hilli looked a lot to Fakhr al-Razi's books and read upon it. So ʿIlm al-Kalam, after Khaja Nasir al-Din and Allam al-Hilli, it got rearranged. Kalam's book, I'll just take an example. Kashf al-Murad. Kashf al-Murad is kind of the main Kalami book after Allam al-Hilli and Khaja Nasir al-Din al-Tusi. Kashf al-Murad, if you compare it to what was before Khaja Nasir al-Din, like Sadid Din al-Hamsi or Sayyid al-Murtada or Shaykh al-Tusi rahimahumullah jami'an, Allam al-Hilli and Khaja also rahimahumullah, yani all of them.
Would you not say Taqrīb al-Ma'ārif as well?
Taqrīb al-Ma'ārif, Abu Salah al-Halabi, all these books before Khaja Nasir al-Din, if you compare them to Kashf al-Murad, not in the conclusions, only in the arrangement of subjects studied, and also what is studied before the doctrines. So not the doctrines in themselves, but what is studied before the doctrines. You'll see a huge difference, because what is studied in philosophy books were studied in Kashf al-Murad in a Kalami sense, in the Mutakallimin's idea. That's why also there was a book at that time written by Khaja Nasir al-Din, and also an explanation for it written by Allam al-Hilli, which was Kashf al-Fawaid. It's different than Kashf al-Murad. Okay. Kashf al-Fawaid studied the differences between the sects and the ways Mutakallimin and philosophy studied subjects. That's the main motivation behind writing Kashf al-Fawaid fi sharh Qawaid al-Aqaid. Different than Kashf al-Murad. Kashf al-Murad is the study of the doctrines and whatever is based on it. But
would you say, sorry to interrupt, would you say the different firaq, I know not all of them were actually real firaq that are mentioned in the books of like al-Milal wal-Nihal or firaq al-Shia and so on. Would you say these schools are not schools of ilm al-Kalam, of the mutakallim?
See,
or is
schools of doctrines or schools of ilm al-Kalam, يعني philosophy at the end is a different science, as we mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
At least it is treated as a different science. Okay, but in ilm al-Kalam we also have different sects. We have Ash'aris, we have Mātūrīdiyas, Mu'tazilis.
Would the Zaydis be considered different schools?
Yeah, it is a different school of thought. It's a different school of thought then.
Would they be considered different school of thought in ilm al-Kalam as well?
Yes, because we have differences.
They had mutakallimin as well.
Yes,
Zaydiyya.
Actually, it is said that Imam Kadim, who have written the Sharh al-Usul al-Khamsa, for one of the main, you can see he is the main actually. The most famous Mu'tazili scholar is al-Qadi Abd al-Jabbar al-Mu'tazili.
Yeah.
He died in 419 Hijri, 419 thereabouts, plus or minus, if I'm not mistaken. Man Kadim is a student of him. It's said that he's Zaydi. And then Zaydi books continued. Al-Rassas Zaydi he has very important books that clarified actually many of concepts which were written in Kalami books, that without some later on books that were written by Zaydiyya, it would have been very hard to understand those concepts. And I'll get to that in the second point. So the first point was that even if we look at those books, getting back to the question, even if we look at those books who were written after the philosophy subjects were introduced to Kalami books, we will see that they treated every subject as a research subject. Sometimes they'll use the concept to explain something, but if the proof were false, they'll refute it. Like what they did in Qa'idat al-Wahid. There's an idea that is mentioned in philosophy that if the cause is one, a true one in all sense, he has to have only one effect. They've refuted it. They did not accept it. They said Mukhtar, Fa'al Mukhtar, as we mentioned earlier on, one of the differences. They said the Fa'al Mukhtar can do more than one. So it's a debate, there's a whole subject in it. But they studied what is mentioned in philosophy books. Sometimes they accepted what is true from it and they refuted what's false from it. What's the problem with that? Study of a science is not wrong in itself.
Yeah.
If you study it as a research subject, if you study it as a science, you can accept what's true and refute what's false. So it's not a mistake to do that. That's the first point. Second point, actually mutakallimin have written their books before even what the books of philosophy was introduced into Muslim world. Mutakallimin were there before that.
They got introduced in the time around Harun al-Rashid's time.
Yeah, but when did it have a huge effect on their understandings? And many mutakallimin refuted those philosophy. Yani if you see in the books of Rijal, al-Rad ala Aristo. Yes. Al-Rad ala Aristo Talis. The Rad refutation.
Yeah, refutation.
Refutation to Aristo Talis. So they refuted what was written in philosophy books. And if you compare the earlier on Kalami books, they're much different than the philosophy books. So it's not based on what is mentioned in Greek philosophy. Actually, one of the hardships that anyone studies Kalam will find is that if you came to read the Mutakallimin's books after you studied philosophy and logic, you will sometimes misunderstand what they mention because their ideas is much different than what is mentioned in philosophy books, to the amount that you have to re-study logic in itself in their understandings.
Would you say that even for example the followers of Ibn Taymiyyah, or even Ibn Taymiyyah himself, he did one way or another have to use logic? It's a natural science.
Definitely at the end what is introduced is logic are many concepts. He did refute some of it in his book Ar-Radd al-Muntaqiyin, but at the end he used many of these concepts in his book. You cannot understand his books clearly without understanding the concepts of logic. At the end, you say, I will start with true premise to go to a true conclusion. This idea is mentioned in the logical books of philosophers. Does this mean that if it's mentioned in the logical books of philosophers, it's a wrong idea? No. Not all ideas are refuted. Some ideas are accepted because they are true premises. We can accept it.
That makes sense, yeah. That does make sense. Okay, so I'm
sorry, I'm jumping from a
no,
but they are all connected, yeah.
No, it's all connected. I want to also understand, just so that the audience, the viewers, can really grasp the importance of such science. If you have something from textual evidences, and obviously maybe something from yourself as well, something to prove the importance or why the science is important.
I'll also mention 2 points. I like the number 2. I think
Number
even in the earlier podcast, we all used to mention 2 points.
2 points. You're a simple man, Shaykh, man.
Okay. First point is that before looking into the narrations and the verses, at the end, we are existing in this life, and we have, every one of us can choose how he lives his life. And every one of us can understand and grasp the idea that there are definitely deeds that are good and deeds that are bad and worse and so on. So, don't you want to do what's good? Don't you prefer to do what's good? Don't you want to know why did you exist? Where are you going? Isn't there a possibility that what do you do in this moment and in this life have an effect later on? These are all questions and possibilities and so on. If
and
someone,
these are the discussions that are happening in ʿIlm al-Kalām.
Exactly. If someone wants to be true to himself, he wants to answer these questions. The main science that studies the answer of these questions is al-Kalām. And actually our Imams, salawatullah alayhim, I'll just mention some examples. Don't want to mention many to take the time, but I'll mention some. There are some narrations in the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah alayhim that show us that Ahlul Bayt salawatullah alayhim actually saw an importance in ʿIlm al-Kalām, and saw an importance to be true in ʿIlm al-Kalām and to be good in understanding.
But there are some ahadith that seem to be talking about against ʿIlm al-Kalām.
Definitely. One of the narration I'll mention will give us a sign of what is the requirement in there.
Jade.
Imam salawatullah alayhi says, al-Kashi narrates, he says, حدثني, this sanad حمدوي عن محمد بن عيسى عن يونس عن إسماعيل بن عبد الخالق. It's an authenticated sanad chain. قال كنت عند أبي عبد الله عليه السلام. I was with Imam Sadiq صلوات الله عليه ليلا at night. فدخل عليه الأحول entered to Imam Sadiq صلوات الله عليه until he says فقال أبو عبد الله عليه السلام. Imam Sadiq said ما لك, what happened with you? And he kept talking with him until he got better because he was scared and so on. And then Imam صلوات الله عليه said to him بما تخاصم الناس, with what you argue people. قال فأخبره بما يخاصم الناس. And الأحول told Imam صلوات الله عليه what did he use in his argumentation with people. The narrator says ولم أحفظ منه ذلك, I didn't grasp it, I didn't memorize it. فقال أبو عبد الله عليه السلام, Imam Sadiq صلوات الله عليه said خاصمهم بكذا وكذا, let your arguments with them be in this way and in this sense, and argue and let it contain this and that. So Imam sallallahu alayhi actually was teaching al-Ahwal how to do ʿilm al-Kalām. Will he teach him if it was not an important thing? Will he ask him? Actually, Imam sallallahu alayhi, he started to ask al-Ahwal, how did you do argumentation? So Imam was interested to teach. He wanted to get a chance to teach al-Ahwal how to do the argumentations.
It's a really nice report. I think it's Hisham bin al-Hakam, if my memory serves me right. He comes in the presence of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and the Imam starts laughing. He says, tell me how you debate, about your debate. I want to hear it.
Yes.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, تفضل Shaykhna.
Another example, also al-Kashi narrates with a reliable chain to Hisham ibn al-Hakam. He said قال لي أبو عبد الله عليه السلام, Imam Sadiq عليه السلام said to him ما فعل ابن الطيار, how is Ibn al-Tayyar? قال قلت مات. Hisham said, I told the Imam صلى الله عليه that he's dead. al-Tayyar is dead.
Yeah.
Imam says رحمه الله ولقاه نظرة وسرورا فقد كان شديد الخصومة عنا أهل البيت. الطيار is a متكلم.
Yeah, I love this. I love his biography is beautiful.
He said, Imam صلى الله عليه said فقد كان شديد الخصومة. شديد الخصومة, if you want to translate it, he's not a hard as
he was harsh, extreme in his argument,
exactly.
in his argumentations.
Extreme argumenter.
Yeah, he was very good at arguing, debating,
defending us.
Yeah,
defending us. So see how he treats Tayyar, how he talks about
yeah.
متكلم. Third narration, And that will explain what you asked about. Give us a sense about it. We have to, it's a huge subject, but this will give us a sign about the answer. Also, al-Kashi narrates it. Hamdoueh, Muhammad bin Isa, Ali ibn al-Hakam, Aban al-Ahmar, and al-Tayyar himself, the one that Imam did tarahum for him. Al-Tayyar himself, Imam sallallahu alayhi says to him, بلغني, or sorry, no, al-Tayyar says to the Imam sallallahu alayhi, بلغني أنك كرهت منا مناظرة الناس وكرهت الخصومة. It got to me. I heard. It reached me. It reached me that you, salawatullahi alayk, Imam, didn't like from us to do arguments with people,
debate with them,
and debate with them. Imam salawatullahi alayhi says, أما كلام مثلك للناس فلا نكرهه. If someone like you does the arguments or do the arguments, we don't hate it. But من إذا طار أحسن أن يقع. Someone who, if he flew, he knew how to get back to the ground. It's a metaphor. Imam sallallahu alayhi is telling them that if you want to do kalam, understanding well, know how to enter the argument and to get out from it. وإن وقع يحسن أن يطير فمن كان هكذا فلا نكره كلامه. فلا نكره كلامه.
Beautiful. Okay, so Shaykhna, what are the different schools of the mutakallimin? Just so that we get a general idea of the different schools within the theologians, the mutakallimin.
Okay. See, within Sunni schools of within Sunni tradition, we can see probably there are the most Sunnis right now. First, we will mention Ashāʿira. Ashāʿira is named regarding Abil Hassan, Ali ibn Ismail al-Ash'ari. He died, I didn't write it in here. I think 315, 316, thereabouts.
4th century.
Ali ibn Ismail al-Ash'ari. And he is also connected to someone who's named Ibn Kullab. That's why in some books you'll see that they name Ashāʿira as Kullabiyya. He died a century earlier on. He died in 240s, 250s. Ibn Kullab al-Qattan. This is the first sect, or the first school in Sunni Kalam. The second one, which are available also now, and there's also a huge part of Sunnis that are believing in these doctrines. They are Mātūrīdiyya. نسبة إلى أبي منصور محمد بن محمود الماتوريدي. He died in 333 Hijri, if I'm not mistaken, and he connects himself to Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man. So that's why many of Hanafis are usually Maturidis. Hanafis in fiqh are usually Maturidis in aqidah. We also have Ḥanābila and Salafiyya, which are two understandings of Ahmad bin Hanbal's doctrine. And both of them say that we are connected to Ahmad. Sorry?
Atharis?
Yeah. They are two. There are two, let's say, explanations or understandings of Ahmad bin Hanbal's doctrines. So they connect themselves to Ahmad bin Hanbal, who died at 241 Hijri. The Ḥanābila, you can mention Abu Ya'la al-Farrā, Ibn Qudām al-Maqdisi from this school of thought, and Salafiyya also connect themselves to Ahmad bin Hanbal, which is Ibn Taymiyyah is the main scholar.
He kind of revived it a bit.
Yeah, that is mentioned with him then, which died as 720.
Yeah.
I forgot, 26 or 28 Hijri.
Yeah, it's 8th century.
Yes. And Ibn al-Qayyim, and it was revived by Ibn Abdul Wahhab later on. And then you can have Sunnis, or out of Sunnis, you can find the Ibāḍiyya school of thought, which you can find in Oman, you can find in al-Jazair. Also, some of them are here and there.
Jazair, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of their scholars, astaghfirullah, he wrote التيسير في التفسير. طفيش. Yes, he was a huge scholar of Ibāḍiyas, very close to our time. Yani. He was in al-Jazair.
Okay.
Or those areas, yani, close to al-Jazair, in Oman and there. And they connect themselves to Jabir bin Zayd. They are named Ibāḍi because of Abdullah bin Ibāḍ, but he was a spokesperson, as they say. He was not a scholar that they relied upon, but he was a spokesperson, and they have related them to Abdullah bin Ibāḍ. That's why they call them Ibāḍi. But as a scholar, they connect themselves more to Jabir bin Zayd, Abu Sha'tha. Yeah, and then you can mention also al-Mu'tazila,
Okay.
which is very different than Ashāʿira and Mātūrīdiyya, and al-Mu'tazila is a Adli school of thought, which actually believe. See, there's a title which is al-Adliyya, schools of thought within Kalam. Al-Adliyya are the schools of thought that believe that there is, they call it in Arabic ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ, واقعيين. There is a reality behind good and evil ethical laws.
Okay.
So,
moral goodness and
yes.
Okay.
There's a reality behind it, and it cannot change. It's there, and it's not nisbi. It cannot change within time and space and so on. And it's not affected by our minds, and it's not created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is as it is. So what's good is good because it's self. What's morally bad, it's bad because of itself, not because of something else. Whoever school of thought believe in this idea is called is put until the title of Adliyya.
Imamiyya will fall underneath
Imamiyya fall underneath it. Mu'tazila fall underneath it. Salafiyya actually also can fall underneath it.
Not all of them?
Sorry?
All of the Salafiyya, or?
What I read from Ibn Taymiyyah's works, he says that there are moral understandings, and he says what's similar to what they mention. And also Zaydiyya is Adliyya school of thought. So Mu'tazila is Adliyya school of thought, and because of the belief of ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ, we have many connections with them, not only in the understanding of God subhanahu wa ta'ala, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his attributes, but also in the adl section of Kalam subject. Because we are connected with them, we have the same understanding about
that
ḥusn and-Qubḥ.
Okay.
So yeah, we can mention al-Mu'tazila, but we don't have Mu'tazilis right now.
Okay. In a bit.
Okay,
That's
sure.
a very important discussion.
But we don't have right now Mu'tazilis. But many of the Mu'tazilis doctrines are also available in Zaydi's books. As we mentioned earlier, a connection is an example of connection from Zaydi's to Mu'tazilis in Man Kadim and al-Qadi Abdul Jabbar. And the Zaydis also have their books until now. There is also Ismailiyya, which have very huge similarities with what is usually mentioned in philosophy books. This is an overview, kind of.
No, Jade. Okay. That's good, because I want the viewers to get a understanding, a feel, because sometimes it's important to understand not just from the Shi'i, Imami kind of perspective, but to get an overview, to know the saha, the environment and how everything is working, why certain discussions was happening. I remember the Sayyid Ali Abu al-Hassan, he sent me one of his books that he's writing, and then it was about imama, and I said, oh, why is there so many introductionary points to imama, like so many muqaddimat, And he said it's because there's so many arguments against it, so you have to put certain principles. And then I started to think a bit more, and I realized, yeah, you know what? In history, the books of al-Kalām and the books of Aqidah started to get bigger and bigger because there's more discussions happening and everyone's trying to refute one another or refute a new concept, a new idea, and so on. So what you mentioned is very helpful, Shaykhna.
Two big volumes at the time of Sayyid al-Murtada of Imamah, Shafi fi al-Kalām.
Yeah. Now it
was a refutation. It was basically a refutation to what Abdul Jabbar was written as Imamah.
Yeah. Now look how many volumes it is for Imamah that's written and so on. Okay. We spoke about in the beginning about the mutakallimin and that they have a connection with the Turath, with textual proofs. They see it as a hujjah, that it's part of their Burhān that they use, and that with text, the Qur'an and the hadith, you can reach certainty, yaqeen from the aqwal of the Imma, the Prophet alayhum as-salam. What do we do when rational proofs and textual proofs contradict?
All right. See, this time I'll need 3 points.
How many do you need?
3 points. First thing, let's talk about this generally, not in an Islamic sense. Okay? Before understanding that this religion is true or false or anything, generally, if you got a proof, an intellectual proof that got you to 100% understanding about something, then you see not even a religious book, a scholar book, that you heard that he's a good scholar, a good researcher, and you read in his book, and you saw that he mentions something that differs or contradicts, not only differs, contradicts what your understanding got to in your intellectual path. Here's 2 things can happen. Sometimes that'll get you to revise your intellectual path, and you'll find a mistake that you didn't, you went past of it. You didn't review it well before going through with it. And sometimes you will see with full clarity that this scholar has a mistake in this sentence. Same thing can happen if you compare any intellectual proof with any intellectual text that contradicts it. Sometimes the religious scripture or text or verse you're reading will get you back to revise your intellectual proof, and it'll show you that you have a problem in your intellectual proof. You will understand it by yourself, and you will know that you had a mistake. But if it didn't do that, you will know that this text has a mistake, has something wrong with it. Okay? This only applies if your understanding for the text in front of you was 100% connected to the text. Because sometimes the sentence that you're reading can have different possibilities in meanings. I'm not talking about this example. I'm talking about the example that your understanding of the text is 100% attributed to the one who wrote the text. So the meaning that you grasped, the meaning that you got, can 100% be said that this is the thing that he meant by saying or writing this sentence. This is the first step, the first point. Second point.
But what you said makes sense. That's fine. And we're trying to find the solution to the problem if it occurs, if there is a contradiction. So I understand what you're saying.
No, until now I didn't mention a solution. Until now I mentioned that this is a way either to revise and understand your proofs or to know that this religion is wrong. And that's what we do actually with some different religions. Sometimes you read, like what do you do with Trinity? What do you do with Trinity? Even though it's not in the Bible as they mention, and I'll leave that to another video or another work that you'll do inshallah on Purified Truth later on with someone else. But let's say, as an example, Trinity is mentioned in the Bible. We'll use that as a way to show that this Bible is false. And it is not attributed to God subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he cannot say something wrong.
And God can't be three.
Exactly.
No, but what I'm saying to you is because there's another element to this question. Does the rational proofs override the textual proofs, or is it the other way around? Let's say a hadith reached us, mutawatir, like it's quite clear what the Imam is saying or what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam is saying. Which one over? But it contradicts rational proofs.
It cannot happen. It's that simple. It cannot happen. If there are two proofs, even if it were two intellectual proofs or two textual proofs, or one intellectual and one textual, if they contradict each other, there is a premise wrong in this whole map. Our work is to find the false premise. It might be sometimes in the way that we got to the understanding from the textual proof, or the way that we got to the understanding from the rational and intellectual proof. Similar to what will you do if you saw two rational proofs proving something contradiction, proving something with a contradiction. It cannot happen. It cannot happen while being true in the same sense. That's why I said that we need to go to three steps. First step was what I mentioned. Second step is sometimes the textual understanding is not 100%, and this happens a lot. This actually happens a lot. The textual the understanding from the texts is not 100% attributed to the speaker. If he was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Qur'an, or the Ma'sumeen in their narrations, the meaning is not 100% attributed to them. It's, let's say we got to 80%.
You just said
90%.
Allah in the Qur'an. You just said Allah in the Qur'an, so I'm trying to understand what do you mean.
No, I mean that the verse was not 100% clear.
Oh, that we didn't understand.
Yeah, we did not understand it 100%. So we have a meaning. Like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim.
Yeah.
Actually, if you read the context clearly, you'll understand very clearly that it doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hand, because the reason behind mentioning Yadullahi fawqa aydihim was to let them feel what this bay'ah was for. It was in الذين يبايعونك إنما يبايعون Allah. The ones who are doing bay'ah with you, O Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih, are doing this bay'ah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through you.
Allegiance is to Allah.
Yeah, they're giving their allegiance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The hand which was on top of their hands was the hand of whom? Of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih. The Muslims knew very obviously that the hand on top of their hands was the hand of Rasulullah when the verse came to them. They knew.
Yeah.
Then the hand on top of their hands were the hand of Rasulullah. This is actually a very obvious example of using metaphors in the Qur'an in this sense. And I don't know how can someone understand this verse as that the hand that is mentioned in this verse is the hand of Rasulullah. The Muslims obviously knew that the verse when talking about the hand in here, it was looking to the hand that is on top of their hands, and they saw clearly that it was the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alih. But it used the metaphor to show them that the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alih not samples, تمثل represents, thank you, it represents the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a hand, to show that this allegiance is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to feel what the meaning is for it. This allegiance is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need you. You are the one who needs him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your Lord, and he can do anything to you if you didn't align with this allegiance, if you didn't abide with it. This verse was an example that we are, let's say, after understanding the whole context, we can get to a high percentage of understanding this verse and saying that this is what is meant by the verse. But can we say that this is 100% what is meant by the verse, or can the metaphor look into something else sometimes? Sometimes there are other possibility. So if a verse has more than one possibility, even though one possibility might go high up to 90%, but there is another possibility.
Yeah.
Here, if it contradicts a rational proof, we can say that what contradicts the rational proof is not meant by the verse. But we cannot say what is meant by the verse. See, this is a very important thing. Rational proofs in themselves cannot get us a better understanding of what is meant by the verse. They can show us what is not a meaning for the verse. This is the second step.
Jameen.
The third step, some rational proofs and other verses can show us the meaning of the verse. Which rational proofs? The rational proofs that could have been comprehended at the time that the verse came down to the Prophet ﷺ. The very obvious rational proofs, or the rational proofs that are mentioned in the Qur'an itself, like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them, لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. Here, this verse is a sign for a proof. I'll not mention it right now because it needs a whole explanation, but just an example. The proof that is mentioned, the intellectual proof, the rational proof that is mentioned in this verse can be used to understand another verse. Why? Because verses of the Quran can look into and explain each other.
Yeah.
So it's a rational proof, but it can be used to understand another verse. Sometimes the rational proof is not mentioned in a verse, but it is mentioned in the narrations of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or it is mentioned in the history in a way that we know that it was in the brains of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when the verse talks, it can rely upon what is known in your mind. See, sometimes, just to understand why I'm differentiating between this and that, sometimes I know that you know they use this example in Arabic. I don't know what's a good translation of it in the context of English language and misunderstanding. We say we use asad as a sign for shaja'a in Arabic. What's used in English? He's a lion also?
He's a lion, yeah, you say the same thing.
So if I told you the lion that we know is in the toilet.
You call me a lion, Sheikh?
Definitely. So if I told you there's a lion in the toilet, what will you understand from my wordings? That someone brave is in there.
I'm not sure.
Unless
I'm not sure I'll understand that in that way, I'll be honest. I don't know if I would understand it in that way, but
as example. No, but even there's a possibility there, yeah, that they brought lions with them. Okay, a lion is throwing an arrow. The lion threw the arrow upon the enemy. If I told you that the lion threw the arrow upon the
it's quite clear that you're talking about bravery.
Exactly. How?
But not in the toilet shit.
It is mentioned actually in some Arabic books as an example.
Really?
Yeah. Anyways.
He must be at war then, I don't know. But yeah.
Maybe I didn't remember it clearly. Anyways, so if I told you that a lion threw the arrow, I'm basing what I mentioned on my knowledge of your understanding of what lion means, what arrow means, what war means, and what connecting these three means. You know that the lion, the animal itself, do not throw arrows.
No.
So I can base my wording on what your understanding has. So sometimes rational proofs can be in the minds of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when the verse comes down on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it can base the wording on the rational proofs that are available at the time of the verse. So these rational proofs can be a sign that help us to understand the verse itself, but not all rational proofs. So if there was a true rational proof that didn't have any sign, we didn't have any sign that it was available or they could have comprehended it at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it can be used to show that this meaning is not meant by the verse, but it cannot help us understand what the verse means actually. Did I clarify the differentiation between the second and third step?
No, it makes sense.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so just to finalize on this question quickly, because I still feel I want you to kind of explain so that the viewers can understand as well. No, the textual proof, it doesn't overpower the rational, nor does the rational overpower the text.
Certainty overpowers whatever is less than certain.
Jamil, that answers the question. Okay.
Now, better if you use this sentence at the beginning and we're done with the question. We're done.
No, the examples were needed. Okay, so you spoke about al-Ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ, correct? So what is al-Ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ, if you can explain that? Do we need to believe in it? Is there a problem if we don't believe in it? Did Allah deem matters? Actually, I'll leave the third part of the question after you explain it.
All right. See, can you start it with an example too?
You want to start with the example?
I think it'll get us to better understanding instead of defining it.
Go.
If, let's say we were standing beside a river.
Yeah.
And we saw a box on the river. The box does not dive in, so you can see it. And someone was standing near you. Let's say you're just a camera. You couldn't do anything. You were watching what's happening, and someone was standing beside the river. And then the box opened, and he saw a child crying inside. So the child definitely needs to be saved at the time, right? And the river was, let's say, flowing very harshly. Okay. It was a very strong flow.
Moving strongly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was very hard to save the child at that moment. The man jumped to the river and saved the child, came back, put him in a safe place, and ran away.
The man ran away.
The man, after putting the child in a safe place, he ensured, he put him in a safe place, and he knew that the family will come to take him, and then he ran away. so no one sees him, and no one knows that he was the one that saved the child. This is the first situation. Second one, same river, same man, same box. It opened. It had money in it, or cheesecake. A huge one.
What type of cheesecake?
Okay, depends.
Depends. Caramel, strawberry.
No, it was a strawberry cheesecake.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I'm fighting to the death for that.
He saw it. He saw the amount of money in it, thought for a bit, and then he jumped, brought it, and took it with him. It has a sign. It had, when he took the box, he saw a sign that had some words written on it, which were, whoever finds the box and takes it, the money is halal.
Hello.
He saw this wording. He took the box for him.
Make dua, Shaykhna.
Bought a castle with it. What do you feel regarding this man in the two examples? Let's start with the second one. So I am the interviewer.
Second one or the first one?
The second one.
What do I feel towards him?
Did he do a mistake?
No.
It was halal.
It's halal.
Do you feel that he deserves something?
No. خلاص, he got the money bad.
عافية عليك.
Yeah. صحة على قلبه.
Done. What about the first one?
He done the right thing, but I'm not sure about leaving the child like that. I would stay with him.
Okay.
If you're asking me.
And what about the man himself? Does he deserve anything?
I think so, yeah.
What does he deserve?
Some type of reward, recognition of some sort.
Or at least some praise.
Yeah.
Good. Or at least a thank.
A thank you, yeah.
Thank you. Why do we feel the difference?
Maybe a cheesecake. Yeah.
Why do we feel a difference between those two situations?
Because of the circumstances. The other one, it said that money's halal for you, whoever finds it. The other one, it was a child, a human. He helped him in very bad circumstances. You know, the river was flowing very strongly and so on. But he left him and ran away. So that will be probably the only little thing. But he still deserves recognition.
All right. So we see something in the first act that is different in the second act. Although the movements of the muscle are the same.
Yeah, he's just trying to get to the box.
Exactly the same. He went down to the water, took the box out, went out of the water. Even though the movements of the muscles are the same exactly, you think that the first situation deserves, the man in it deserves some praise. The second situation does not deserve any praise. This is the basis of our understanding of ḥusn al-Qubḥ. We're saying that there are ethical morals that we can understand and comprehend. Ethical
just
laws.
For the viewers that, just so they understand, a good translation of it, I think, would be, one of the brothers gave a good translation, is rational, moral goodness and abhorrence.
See, what we felt in the first one, that he did something right. You said good.
Yeah.
He did something right. He did something good. He did something ethical. See, our scholars in al-Kalām used to say that every deed has one of two types of motivations. Everything that is done by a mukhtar, by a free-willed doer or actor, is motivated by one of two kinds of motivations. In Arabic, they say, دواعي الحكمة ودواعي الحاجة. Motives of wisdom, or wisdom-based motivations. دواعي الحكمة. دواعي الحاجة is necessity-based motivations. So حاجة is necessity.
جميل.
Necessity-based motivations.
جميل.
What did they mean by دواعي الحكمة and دواعي الحاجة? They meant by دواعي الحاجة, necessity-based motivations, are the motivations that are connected to what you get back to yourself. Either you feel good or you take a bad feeling off. Remove or omit a bad feeling that you feel. So if you're having a pain, you'll remove it. You'll eat Panadol to remove the headache. So eating the pill, the motivation behind it is a necessity-based motivation. Taking the money or the cake is the motivation behind it is a necessity-based motivation. It's getting something back to yourself. So even though it's not wrong to get something back to yourself in itself, yani, it is not wrong. Like the second situation that I mentioned, he did not do anything wrong. He got the money and it was halal. But it is for himself. It's based on a necessity-based motivation. But the first situation was based on a wisdom-based motivation. What do they mean by wisdom-based motivations? The motivations that are connected to the ethical laws, to the ḥusn and qubḥ, to what is moral and what is not moral. That's why I mentioned that he ran off. Why? Because if I said that he stayed, you might have said that maybe he took the child off the water and saved him to get the praise. And getting the praise can give you a good feeling. So it might get back to the necessity-based motivation. I wanted to remove all the possibilities of connecting the deed to the necessity-based motivation. Some studies in the ethical part or subjects say that even the wisdom-based motivations get back to the necessity-based motivation. If it did, we will not find a real difference between the first and the second situation. Because it'll be like eating a cheesecake.
Yeah.
That one is feeling good because he ate a cheesecake. That one is feeling good because he saved the child. If actually there was nothing there but feeling good, we will not feel a difference. We will not believe, actually, we will not understand and comprehend very clearly that he deserves a praise.
That he's done something good, yeah.
This is what do we mean by ḥusn al-Qubḥ. That's why we say, yani, denying ḥusn al-Qubḥ is very hard. You cannot deny it and live actually with denying it. You can deny it in wordings, but you cannot live with it. There are simplest things, and huge doctrines are based on it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la ilaha illallah. We say la ilaha illallah. What does ilah means?
The one who's worshipped.
The one who astaghfirullah. Mustahiq is the one who deserves to be worshipped.
Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's deserving of worship and obedience. The word deserving is based on ḥusn al-Qubḥ. What does deserve means? Try to explain it without connecting it with anything moral. You cannot. That's why anyone says there is no moral laws, he cannot explain why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves obedience or deserves ibadah, worship. He cannot. The many words we use in our daily language, you say. So
are you saying it's the natural state of a human being, just like he's got the fitrah, he also has the rational, moral compass to allow him to understand things?
Definitely, it's actually the exactly same understanding that you have for causality.
Let me push back a bit. I have to make it hard for you, Sheikh.
The subject is very easy. You cannot.
Okay, let me try.
It's very clear.
A pedophile. He sees it. He feels good. He feels like it's a good thing that he is kidnapping these children and doing whatever he does with them. Because you just said, see, I tried to trap you a bit. So you just said that just like the fitrah, every human being has a moral compass that he understands this is good to do and this is bad to do. Now, the paedophile, he thinks, let's just say there is a paedophile out there that he believes kidnapping children and doing whatever he does with them is a good thing, and he feels good about it, and it's, from an ethical standpoint, it's correct.
Yeah, it's like someone saying that believing in the law of contradiction does not work with me. I deny it. It can be said.
No, but because you said every human being has the rational capacity to be able to understand good and bad, or good and evil.
And it is exactly the same as the rational capacity to understand and comprehend the primaries. What they say as awaliyat, the main pillars of our understanding. Like, just take another example. Actually, the primaries is it's used in logic. Let's take another word.
But us human beings always differ, Shaykhna. We always differ
on
what's right and what's wrong.
All right, let's.
Here in the West, you know, you hear these voices. They say to you, woman, you Muslims, you make your woman cover themselves. Maybe they don't want to be covered. Why does your God, or why does your book say women have to be covered?
See, we'll need to dive a bit deeper in this. We got the basic understanding of it. Let's go deeper to understand what answers this question, or these questions. See, when we say that there are ethical laws, and these ethical laws are very clear, similar to the law of contradiction, similar to the law of causality, and so on. These self-evident, clear truths.
Yeah.
We do not mean that every act that can be done, we can show directly that it is either right or wrong. Just give me a minute here.
General principles, you're saying?
No. Let me continue apart, and then I'll tell you.
Okay.
Let's say you got out of your house, and you saw a group of people. They took someone, and they kept hitting him hardly. Bloodshed was happening. The first feeling that will come to yourself, what? I need to defend him. Right? I need to help him. But if someone from that group told you that, as your example, he's a pedophile and he took our sister and young sister and did something to her, what will you feel then? You might go and hit him with them.
Oh, join them.
You'll join them. See, sometimes I'm mentioning this example to get to 2 points. First point, there is a difference between feeling something and expecting something, and between actually getting a full clarity of something.
Explain that.
When you saw him being hit, you said that I need to help him. It will feel good to help him. It is right to help him, although you're not 100% certain. See, there's a difference between decisiveness and knowledge. What happened in your heart at that moment is decisiveness. You said that he's definitely a mazloom. He's definitely oppressed. I definitely need to help him. But this definitely was not knowledge. Because you did not know the situation or the reason behind hitting him. So you did not have enough knowledge to say what should be done there.
Mm.
But even though if I ask you at that moment, you will say with, I am 100% certain. But if you took some seconds and contemplated, you could have known at that moment that you do not understand the situation, and you do not have the right to say that he needs help or he needs to be hit, because you don't have enough knowledge. So first thing is that we need to understand that not every moment of decisiveness that we have is the knowledge that we are talking about. This is the first thing that we need to understand. Second thing, many situations have some factors that can affect the moral compass regarding it that we do not have knowledge of them. As an example, when they say that your God is oppressing women, if they tell them to cover their hairs, let's ask, what does oppress means? And does it affect, is it a factor that can affect the moral idea that applies here? Is it a factor that he actually owns them? We are all his property, subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our belief.
Yeah.
We are all his property, subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we are his property, isn't it right and true that if we are his property, it is his right to choose what he will do with us? He'll definitely not do something non-moral to us, but it is his right, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know and we proved in our doctrines of religion, in cilm al-Kalam, that he will not do anything that is not moral. But if he asked us to do something or obligated us to do something, it is his right to do it. He has his reasons behind obligating us to do something, behind making it an obligation to wear the hijab. But even if he didn't have any reason behind it, it is his right, because he owns him, he owns her, and he owns me. So it is his right.
Okay, but
so getting back to your question, saying that it is an oppression is like saying that person needs help. That's why I mentioned this example.
Jameel. No, that makes sense.
It is like saying that person needs help. It is saying something without comprehending the whole situation.
Okay, so Jayed, you've explained to why we need to believe in al-Ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ. What is, or what happens if we don't believe in it?
Okay.
Like, what's the problems that will occur?
I don't know where to start.
No,
I've mentioned an example.
Give us about 2-3 examples.
All right. I've mentioned an example earlier.
The main ones, the most important ones. And so we can I want to get to the third part of the question, which I think is really important, Sheikh.
Okay. So I'll just remind you, the example that you mentioned earlier was regarding La ilaha illallah, worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll mention 2 more examples or 3. One more example is something that we use daily. When you say iqab, the word iqab is mentioned in the Qur'an.
Let me just interrupt you, Sheikh. So your next example, obviously, it seems like it's going to be more of a practical one that we do in our day-to-day life. The third one, I would like an example on the khalal, the problem that will occur in our aqidah.
Yeah, this is the second example is connected to both of them. But I'll start from something that we use in our daily life to get to a good understanding and move it there.
Jameel.
So the word iqab, let's say if I said to my child that if you did this and that, I'll do this to you. Right? I'll give you a punishment. See, these are 2 different words. Hit you and punish you. What's the difference?
Hit you is very specific. Punishment is it could be general.
This is the first difference. Other than that, if you say I punished him, you're saying within this sentence that he deserved it. Punish contains deserving.
صحيح.
Similar to what iqab in Arabic language means.
صحيح.
Iqab contains deserving. See,
Jamil.
getting back to? That's why when the Qur'an says, this is what you deserve because of your deeds. What happens in the hereafter is all the verses that talks about hereafter, either the ones that goes to Jannah or the ones that will go to Jahannam. This is because of your deeds. This is what you deserve by your deeds. What does it mean? If there's no moral compass, what does deserve mean? There's no good and bad.
Then what's the reason for heaven and hell?
Nothing. Nothing. It cannot be rationalized. Heaven and hell, hereafter, all these doctrines cannot be rationalized. And that's why some Islamic sects which didn't believe in Ḥusn al-Qubḥ said that these all can be rationalized because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us about it. But there is no rationality behind the hereafter. There is no rationality behind it. Can you believe that?
Wow.
This is a huge effect on our doctrines, on our aqidah.
Okay, so let me push
This is
back
the
a
first
bit.
example. Yeah.
Let me push back a bit. Do you have another example?
I'll mention, but push back first.
Okay.
Let's see.
No, the pushback will be after the third one. You'll
All
see why.
All right, let's mention another example. Another example is that, and it is mentioned actually in the books of Kalam. If we didn't believe that there is a moral compass and that lying is non-moral in itself.
That was my next question.
Is it?
I was getting to a question about lying.
Oh, okay.
Let's see where you're going with this one. Maybe you answer my question before I even ask
I
it.
hope so. If we didn't say that lying and leading people to falsehood is wrong and it's non-moral, what proof can we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not lead us to believe a lying prophet? A lying man who's saying I'm a prophet.
Say that again. Repeat it, please, Shaykhna.
If we say that there is no moral compass and no self-evident reality that we understand and comprehend, that lying and leading people to false paths is qabih, is not moral, what proof can we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not lead us to believe a lying man who's saying that I am a prophet, but he's not a prophet? The proof that we have is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that lying is not moral, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do not moral deeds. Other sects had many problems with that.
So you're saying Hassan al-Qadri, for whatever reason, was in a small plane with his mother and father. This plane crashed. I was a baby. The mother and father die. Somehow, I survived. I don't know, maybe gorillas or something. طرزان شوية مو مشكلة لا بأس. And I survived somehow. I would rationally know that lying is bad.
Yes. If you didn't have a problem with your mind.
No. يعني Tarzan looked like he was okay after, so I'm sure I'll be okay. But okay. Jade, okay, you answer that. But so what if lying, I need to lie to save someone's life?
See, just asking this question. Remember when we usually taught these problems, some Islamic sects used to mention these examples as a problematic examples for us adliyya.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
I used to mention in the lectures earlier on, years ago, that just concentrating and choosing these examples is a sign that there is a moral compass. Do you know why?
Why?
Why don't they say, if you were in a situation that you didn't know, should you eat your lunch or help a prophet? Did you? They use an example like this? No. The examples
Say
they
the example
brought,
again.
you were in between
Yeah.
eating your lunch and helping a prophet, or saving a prophet. They didn't use these examples. Why?
What was the lunch?
Oh, no, it's getting late. It seems like. No, it's
Okay, so
they usually use. They always use examples that are related to the moral compass. See, just asking the question gets you to a feeling that, or understanding, not feeling, an understanding that there is something contradicting. Saving a prophet's life and lying. They usually use this example. If you are between lying and saving a prophet's life, what will you do? You'll definitely say, I'll save the prophet's life, and they'll lie. Then they say what? See, then lying is not ethically non-moral. The answer is what? Why did you ask this question? Why did you choose lying and saving the prophet? Because you know that there is a contradiction between lying and saving the prophet. Just understanding that there is a contradiction shows you that lying is non-moral in itself.
Why is there a contradiction?
No. Why did you choose this example? This is my question. What's the problem in this example? Why don't you choose another example that you mentioned earlier on to ask the question about? See, do you feel different, or do you think that there's something different between the two questions? If you're between saving a prophet's life and eating your lunch, or if you're between saving the prophet's life and lying, there's a difference. In the first one, the contradiction you're feeling is that I lose something myself, but I'll do something good. In the second question, the problem that you have is that I either do this bad thing or that bad thing.
What you're saying is that you asking the question, that means you already have accepted that lying is bad.
Yes.
And
choosing this question.
And that is al-Ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ.
Yes. But this is not the answer. This is just a sign that I wanted to say.
Okay.
I wanted to show. The answer is contradiction between two bad deeds can happen. Although contradiction between two good deeds can happen. If you have $1 or £1 and you have it in one coin, let's say, so you cannot divide it, and you have two people in need in front of you.
Yeah.
You have to choose one of them and give the pound to one of them only. So you will see who's more poor than the other one, right? To give him the pound, or who's more in need, or who has a chance to get another pound from someone else, and who does not have a chance, right? You will try to choose which way giving the pound is better. Does that mean that giving a pound is not good for the other one? If you choose A,
no.
Does it mean that giving a pound for B is wrong?
No.
Or it's not moral? No. It means that there was muzahama, there was
difficulty.
Kind of. That's why what I meant by contradiction. You didn't know what to prioritize than the other one. Right? You're having a hardship prioritizing one than the other. So just having a hardship prioritizing one than the other doesn't mean that it is not good in itself, or this is not good in itself. They're both good, but there are priorities. Even in this example, lying is bad, not saving a prophet is bad. You're trying to get an understanding to decide which priorities you have to go on.
And the fact that you know both of them are bad means that you have some rational moral compass. Jameel. Third part of the question. Okay. Did Allah deem matters good because they are inherently good, or because He determined them to be this way? I actually had to write down the question So I kind of, I feel like there's some depth to the question.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make what is good good, but He knows what's good is good.
Explain.
Again, if I say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that made what is good good, it means like it is possible that lying, that oppressing someone could have been something moral. And that clearly contradicts the self-evident truths about morals that we have. Oppression is always bad. It cannot be good. In itself, like contradiction, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make the contradiction impossible. The existence of contradiction, A does exist and that does not exist at the same time in space and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make or create the law of contradiction. The law of contradiction is as it is. It is impossible in itself. Things that contradict cannot happen in themselves. It's the same as oppression and lying and doing good to people and so on. Doing good to someone, benefiting someone is good in itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make it or create it good.
Are you saying Allah didn't create good and evil?
No, He created good, but He did not make the good good. So He did not create morality, but He does what is good. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay. I'm just trying to think if the viewer would understand exactly what you're trying to say. It's a complex discussion, Shaykhna.
That's why I mentioned the law of contradiction to show that this example is not only in the moral laws.
Okay.
Like causality. Let's say causality.
Yeah.
Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create causality? Causality is the relation between the cause and the effect. So every effect should have a cause for it, right? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create this relation? Before creating this relation, so when He created it, He created an effect, right?
So you're saying it naturally became how it is?
Not became, it's naturally as it is. There is no point in time that it became like this.
Okay.
It is as it is.
So it's good because it's inherently good, and not that Allah wanted it to be good.
And our efforts regarding it is understanding it.
Okay.
Does not change it.
Okay.
We can comprehend it and understand.
I'm just trying to think of a way to fight back. I can't let you off that easy.
I told you morality is very clear.
So what I want to get to a point as well, just quickly on this point, and we'll move on. Allah created everything the way that it is. Okay. He did not create good, nor did He create evil. Is that what you're saying?
No, created good, but He did not create the law. See, there is nothing outside which is the law. There is nothing outside which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a law that we see walks and talks and...
Oh, this is right, this is wrong, this is...
So, the law is as it is.
But the Qur'an tells us, which is Allah's words, for example, this is right, this is wrong, praying is good, zakat is good.
Here, you're introducing one more thing. See, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, let's take an example. When He asks Ibrahim alayhi salam to to not kill his son, to
sacrifice his son. Yeah.
When he requires from Ibrahim alayhi salam to sacrifice his son, is that in itself a good deed? Before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking Ibrahim to do it, alayhi salam.
No, it's not.
We don't have anything in our understanding that shows us that it's a good deed.
Sacrifice, yeah, of course not. No.
Right? But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligates it, requires it from Ibrahim alayhi salam, is it good in that sense?
Yeah.
Why is it good?
Because Allah said so.
Because it's obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Because it's obedience.
So when something becomes obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes good. Morally. When something becomes obedience, it becomes good. This is a way of understanding.
Okay.
I'll just add something. There is another way that our mutakallimin used to use to understand and comprehend the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Sharia. They used to say there is a title in the moral ideas that you understand, which is lutf. Lutf is something that gets you closer to do what is good and gets you further from doing what's bad. All right? They used to say, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires us to do or requires us to refrain from is either something good in itself and we can comprehend it directly,
or we can't.
Or it is lutf. And they used some verses that are connected to this idea, like in the salata tanha
عن الفحشاء والمنكر.
kutiba alaykum as-siyam. The end of the verse says, لعلكم تتقون. You might guard yourself because of sawm, because of fasting. So they used to say that Sharia are actually laws that are all lutf. So they are moral things. But we have a problem. We cannot comprehend lutf by ourselves. We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tell us what are the deeds that are altaf, that are lutf. So we can comprehend lutf, and we know that lutf is good morally, but we cannot know what is lutf for ourselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sharia completes our understanding of our moral map. This is an understanding that was mentioned in the Mutakallimin's book. Another understanding is what I've mentioned earlier on, that we understand the moral map, and everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from us becomes moral because it is an obedience to who owns us, because of his ownership of us. So if it's mentioned in the Qur'an and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that this is good, it's either good because it's love, or it's moral and good because it is an obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes says that it is good not because that it is morally good, but he tells us that even though it is morally good, it will be good for you, beneficial for you also. Moreover than that,
like alcohol, the ahkam of alcohol, he tells us in the Quran, yeah.
Or آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تعلمون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا. In the verse that talks about earth, he says subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of it, you do not know who would be more beneficial to you. I know, so let me decide. So the decision of the ahkam al-earth is connected to what will be more beneficial to you, not only what is morally good to you.
Okay, perfect, Shaykh. Thank you for the answer. I want to get into the problem of evil, because we discussed this when we was discussing al-Ḥusn wa-l-Qubḥ. So, how can we believe in a just God who allows evil to take place in the world? That is, if we say that God himself is not responsible for the evil in this world. This is the position of the Imāmiyya regarding evil. You can answer it in two parts if you like, if it makes it easier for you to keep things organized.
Yeah, I'll need to go through it in steps. Yani. First step is that we need to understand that not all pain is morally bad. And I think if we get back to the examples that we mentioned earlier on, it's obvious that the man that got hit because he did a bad thing for their sister was not bad. Getting
the pedophile.
Yeah, the pedophile. In itself, it's not bad. So hitting in itself is not bad. Getting pain in itself is not bad.
Causing pain.
Oh, causing pain. Sorry, not getting. Causing, actually. Causing pain itself is not bad. As an example, if we were walking together outside in London, and a car was going to hit you, and I pushed you a bit just to get you out of the path or the way that the car was driving in.
Yeah.
Actually, you got hit from me. You got some pain from me. I caused some pain for you. But that pain is not bad, morally. So not every sense of causing pain or not every example of causing pain is morally bad.
Jade.
But causing pain can sometimes be morally bad and sometimes is not morally bad.
Okay.
And it is morally bad if it's a punishment for someone who does not deserve it. Punishing someone without being deserving of the punishment is morally bad. That's clear, because punishment requires deserving it. So, yeah, this is the first point. Second point, what we see in this world is sometimes pain and sometimes morally wrong or non-ethical deeds. And when we talk about the problem of pains, it's actually connected to these two ideas. And I think it's very clear until now.
Why are you using pain and not evil? Or it's just a form to bring the example closer to home?
Yes, I'm trying to get to understand it clearly.
Okay, no, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, sure. So sometimes we're talking about pains. If we're talking about pain, it means that it's not always bad. It can be good. If we're talking about non-ethical deeds, it's always bad. But who's doing it? So that's why I'm differentiating between those two. And I think it's very clear until now that no one can enter or use this problem unless he bases his argument on the reality of moral, rational laws.
Jameen.
If he don't believe in the moral, rational laws, he should not enter this argument at all. Because what's wrong with pains if there are non-moral, rational laws? So, if someone got inflicted by pain, here we have two choices. Since pain is not ethically bad in itself, pain can be inflicted by God Himself, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and can be inflicted by
the
humans, His slaves, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it was inflicted by His slaves, it sometimes can be good or bad. From His slaves, from we humans. So His role in it is enabling it. So He enabled the pain to happen. He enabled the one who wanted to inflict the pain to inflict it, actually. He gave him the ability, and when he wanted to do it, he accepted it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I say accepted it, I mean bi'idhnihi. I don't mean that he said that it is right morally, or he accepted it to happen, as in he said that it's not an obligation to leave it. No, but he adhina bidhalik. All right? So this is his connection to this deed. When we talk about him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving the actor the ability and the power to do the bad deed, it is actually giving at the same time him the power to refrain from doing the bad deed. Because ability means ability of doing something and refraining from it. Or it will not be ability. So giving the ability of doing the bad deed and refraining from it in itself is not wrong morally. Because you're giving him a chance to put him in a tribulation. Since you're giving him the ability, you're giving him a chance to put him in a tribulation. Taking someone to the exam hall. When I took him to the exam hall, I gave him a chance to write the answers and to leave them. Giving him a chance to write the answers and to leave them is not bad in itself.
So you're saying this is all connected to the purpose of creation and the purpose of free will and the purpose of the creation of heaven and hell.
Definitely. But I'm getting to that. So what I'm saying is that it is not morally wrong in itself. But if we want to understand the reason behind it, we'll need to go to understand the reason behind the life, the whole life in itself, which is tribulation, and benefits. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do not need anything from us. But that's a better understanding. The problem of pains does not have an effect if it is not morally wrong. So if we just show that it is not wrong to give the ability in itself, we're showing that there is no problem in the pains in this world. Sometimes we want to understand it better. We say, well, then why did he do it? Now there's no contradiction, there's no problem. But we want to understand it better. We say for tribulation. Did it get clear? And the differentiation between those two questions?
It does, yeah.
All right. So giving the ability is not wrong in itself. Accepting it, giving the idhn takwini, for it to happen, for it to occur. So the idhn, accepting it to occur, not accepting it lawfully, and not making it lawful, but accepting that it occurs. I'll give you an example. If I had a lecture hall and I saw a student that wanted to come inside, I knew that he's not a good student. I knew that he'll not study well. And he will enter the class and do some not lawful things. But if he did them in the class and the other students saw him doing it with his choice, fully, it's his choice, the other students saw him, they'll study better because they do not want to be like him. He's now out the door. If I gave him the chance to enter and do the bad thing in the class, the not lawful thing in the class, like screaming within the lecture or something, all right? I gave him, by opening the door, I gave him the ability. We did say that giving the ability is not bad in itself. When he screamed in the class, I accepted it to happen in the class. I did not deem it lawful. I still told him to stop screaming, but I could have took him out of the. I could have taken him out of the class. I didn't. Why? Why did I accept him to do it while not accepting it as lawful? And I didn't take him out of the class because I knew that it has a good effect on the other students to make them do better in their studies if they see the bad example. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving the ability to do bad thing is not bad in itself. Accepting it to happen but not accepting it to be lawful is not also a bad thing, because he might have a reason behind it. Just having a possibility of a reason behind it removes the problem of pains and removes the problem of evil.
Okay, but okay, your examples make sense, no problem. Let me push back a bit. A woman is walking to her house, it's 12 at night. A rapist comes out of a bush of some sort and he rapes her. Why would a just God accept, allow, and not intervene and stop this rapist from doing this hideous, disgusting crime against this woman?
Good question. Very good question. Why?
Because it's a bit different from a student, doing things that are unlawful to do in a class, and then, because that makes sense. But I have to understand, why would you not intervene?
Perfect.
You could have helped. Why not help? You could have stopped it. Why not stop?
All right. You said that there's a difference between this example and the example I mentioned, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, one, there was no one there to see him. It was at night. He did the action, the crime. A human was affected by this crime. She was raped, she was hurt, he caused her a lot of pain, mentally, physically, spiritually, in every shape or form, psychologically. And let's just say, for argument's sake, let's make it the worst type of case. He got away with it. She didn't really see him. There's no cameras. He got away, and she got raped.
The difference is that it plays with your emotions.
With my emotions.
Definitely.
Why?
The second example is different from the first example that I mentioned, because the first example is not something that we deny emotionally a lot. Screaming in the class is something we're used to.
Yeah, I used to scream
Even
a lot.
Even though if something like the brother here, someone like the brother we have here, who treats classes and knowledge as something very huge, and respecting classes and the laws in the class as something huge, you will feel emotionally hurt with the example that I mentioned, the first one.
Sorry.
But the other example connects to almost all people's hearts, because we cannot withstand seeing this situation. See, emotions affect us a lot. I'll get back to the example I mentioned earlier on. The one who is getting hit outside your house. Why do you decisively say that he has to be saved? Emotions. Emotions play with our hearts a lot. And it plays with the answer that we decide a lot. It is actually one of the main causes of our mistakes. This second example, if you try to comprehend it, what happened? Let's try just to comprehend it without emotions. It's hard. It's very hard. And I'm not saying that it's not something okay to happen, and I'm not saying that it's all right. She'll get back whatever she deserves from him, definitely in the hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not leave him. We know that.
Of course.
But I'm still saying, try to comprehend it. What actually happened? A bad deed? He chose it by himself, and she got hurt. If we just get the ideas behind it, this is the summary of it. So something morally bad happened, similar to screaming in the class. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let it happen for it to be a tribulation for him and her, for her to be a chance to withstand, to understand, for her to be a chance to control, to be tribulated in controlling her emotions and getting them straight with her moral understanding. And it's a very hard tribulation, but it's a tribulation that can happen. Let me just continue the idea here. It's a tribulation that can happen. So there is, after comprehension, there is no difference between the two situations. We are inclining, because of our emotions in the second example, to refuse it to happen, because we don't want to see it. It's hard for us to see it. But it is actually, if you understand it well, it is actually a tribulation for us also. Because when you see children getting hurt, it's hard. It's hard to comprehend it. And we see it all the time. We see it in these days. But if you see it and you know the moral reasoning behind it, here you have a tribulation. How do you control your emotions in the right way? Put them in the right path so they do not drive you to the wrong path.
Yeah.
You need to get them straight with your right comprehension of your moral principles and ethics.
A bit off topic, but this all comes down to, I always talk about the psychological effects of trials and tribulations. And I always say this, after I buried my children, I never ever questioned Shaykhna, Allah. when my son died, I prostrated to Allah. I went into sujood and I said, thank you. And I remembered Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam said, take as it pleases you. But there was a thing, and I can feel it, and I feel like, and forgive me, and I'm not saying this from a arrogant perspective, but I'll consider myself to be someone that has emotional intelligence, and so I can feel I am slipping from the mountain, the metaphorical mountain, and I knew if I fall, to climb back up the mountain, because you know sometimes when I have friends that went through trials and tribulations. It was so deep, and I have family members that they lost themselves. They were gone for many years. And I knew that I had to continue climbing the mountain. And if I fell, I shouldn't fall too much. Because sometimes we're trying to climb the mountain and you're only able to climb it with the amount of strength that you have. And that's why building yourself up based upon the Qur'an and Sunnah, and the Imams, they always talk about the different attributes: sabr, tawakkul, foresight. And these things really did help me, because I remember sitting there, and I'll never forget, I was sitting on the side of my bed, because you know you went to the hospital excited, come back home empty-handed, and my son is in a coffin. And I remember sitting on the side of my bed, and I said, I was speaking to myself, you know, between me and myself. I said, Hassan, you can't fall, because if you fall, you're probably not going to get up for a very long time. And I think the strength of Iman and what you're saying is that do not let your emotions override your rationality and your rational moral compass, is that you continue and you have tawakkul upon Allah. Sorry, it's a bit of a side note.
No, really.
But it struck home. It struck home with me.
الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. See, the meaning behind it is the important thing. إنا لله, I am the ownership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It means He can do anything for me. You have to remember that at the end. You are His ownership. You are something. You are His property. He has the right. He created us from nothing. We were nothing. We did not exist. Do you know what not even a smell, not even a shape, not even a picture, nothing.
I like what you're saying as well, because I think most people forget when we get into these theological, philosophical, rational discussions, we forget that it's all linked.
Definitely. That's why
if you can't talk about nubuwwah if you haven't started with tawheed.
Ahsant.
Or existence of Allah.
That's why I've heard from some of my friends and colleagues and so on that if someone studies Kalam, his heart will become
dry.
It's a metaphor. How can you use it in English? It's dry, but I don't know what's the good metaphor in English similar to it. Hard. Thank you.
Yeah.
So your heart would get hard. Actually, when I studied Kalam, I felt different. I felt actually much better. My heart got softer. Inna lillah. So I am His property. He can do whatever He wants to me. And then wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And we are getting back to Him. What does it mean in this sense? In the masa'ib sense, in tribulation sense, that whatever rights I lost, whatever oppression was acted upon on me, I'll get back my right. I'll get back whatever I deserve.
What do you think about this point? I want to say this, and it's a personal point. But I want to see what you say. Because sometimes it's important that we talk from an emotional, human perspective. Right now we're talking rationality, principles, al-Kalām. So I had a thought. I was sitting down one day, and I said, and I've never questioned Allah as to why. Allah, why did you do this to me? Never. But I wanted to be able to answer myself and my non-Muslim friends, because they were like, oh, like, how are you still strong? They all said that to me. And I want to see what you say about this. So the way I thought of it was like this. So maybe in ʿālam al-Dharr, or the world before this world, the world of particles, if you want to call it that, my son was so good, he passed the test so good, and which skyrocket scores, if you want to call it that. And he was so good that in this life, he didn't go through the examination. That's it. Allah just, because obviously there's no hukum on him. He didn't live enough to be able to, where there's a judgment on him, or for him to go through the examination. And he went to Jannah. He will be in Jannah, inshallah, for sure. So, what would you say to that as a point? Because I'm talking to the people that have lost a child, lost maybe a father of some sort, or something along them lines. Let's say child, because a child, obviously, if he's a child, he died, he'll be going heaven for sure. There's no hukum on him, right? There's no day of judgment. He won't be judged.
See, some narrations mention that the ones that did not go through tribulation in this world are either in Jannah with their families, or they'll have a tribulation in the hereafter.
SubhanAllah.
The narrations mention that a fire will be lit in front of them, and they will be asked to go through it.
Allah.
And
Akbar.
whoever goes through it passes the tribulation, and whoever does not pass the tribulation, and so on. So it's either a different chance for a different time, and or either he'll be in Jannah. But definitely, if he was in Jannah, it's a benefit, not a reward, because there is a difference between a reward and a direct benefit.
What do you mean?
Reward comes with praise, and that needs tribulation. And that's why the reason behind creating us is tribulation. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to reward us and praise us, we need to go through tribulation and to choose the right choices. Because if, let's say, I brought someone now from the road who's walking on the path, and he brought him here, and he told you, praise him and give him a reward. You'll tell me, I cannot. You cannot, because he didn't do anything to deserve it. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us for thawab, we have to go through a tribulation to be deserving of this thawab, of this praise in the hereafter. So you either are created for benefit directly, which is something good, or a reward that includes praise. You just picture the day of the hereafter. Everyone is there, and defraud everyone. It is called upon you. You deserve Jannah. You did good. And everyone's seeing, and you're walking happily to Jannah. Or Sayyid al-Shuhada, salawatullah alayhi, Imam Hussein is in front of you, and he's telling you, you deserve to come with me.
Allah.
What's better than that scene? Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and takes your hand. Salawatullah.
So I just want to get back into it. We went a bit off topic. We got a bit emotional. So you have the human. He does the evil act. You've explained it. What about when Allah causes a storm, and then a whole town, a whole village, a whole area is just wiped out?
So first we talked about the pain that happens from the human. The pain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deems it as non-lawful, but He accepts it to happen. And that is, I think it's clear until now. The other part of it is the pains that happens from humans, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deems it lawful, or the pains that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. These two kinds have the same reasoning behind it. First, there is no moral problem with it, since it's not morally wrong. And if someone wants to show that there is a problem in the pain, even in the hurricanes, what is the moral problem with it? Hurricanes are something that happen. They're not punishments. They're pains that happen to different kinds of people. It causes them death. If we are his ownership, is this non-lawful ethically? Who's saying that?
Why would he? If he's a good, just God, why would he do that?
We'll get to that.
Children dying in painful ways sometimes because of the hurricane or storm or whatever.
Yeah, we'll get to that, inshallah. But I want to clarify something, that there is no problem of evil or pains until now. We need to understand it to get a better understanding of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does for us. We're not refuting a problem that comes out to our doctrine right now. To get a better understanding of it, the narrations and the verses told us that there are many things that are behind those things that happen. Sometimes it is to open a door of another tribulation that we mentioned, like we mentioned earlier on. Sometimes it is lutf, either for the person himself or for someone that sees him. Like the example I mentioned, when I let him to come to the class and he did the bad thing, it was lutf for the other sinners because they got better. Sometimes when a hurricane happens, see, I've seen it again and again in my life. Some people cannot change. I'm saying they cannot change while being able to choose, Not cannot change by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will, everyone can change.
Of course.
But I'm saying while still being free-willed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants sometimes to keep a human in tribulation and keeping him a free-willed person, but changing him. So if you want to change him, sometimes some people do not change unless gotten in pain. Some of the people we knew around and we saw did not change, but when his father died, his life got upside down and he got better. His eyes opened. He now sees clearly that there is an ending to this life and there is death. I need to treat it as a responsible man. So he changes his life. He's getting better. So the death of his father was lot for him. At the same time, it might be a tribulation for the wife, the mother. She was good. She was pious. She needed another tribulation to open the door for more thawab for her, for more rewards for her. Her husband died. It's your chance. This is a new tribulation. The tribulation has to be hard.
By the way, we see this in society now, by the way.
Definitely.
And there's a whole discussion about why society is collapsing, especially young men. It's because there's this new thing where it's like we are celebrating people that are losing. Why are you celebrating someone that's lost? No. He needs to learn that you lost, but you've got another chance to do better. But you didn't win. You know? You have مثلا a boxing match. Let's say there was a tournament. You lost the fight. Don't celebrate him losing.
Learn from it.
Yeah, learn from it. But nowadays in our society, it's become so liberal that they've made it seem like as if like losing is okay. But it's like no, losing is okay in the sense that you can learn from it. But losing doesn't mean you won. We don't celebrate you losing. And this is very important, especially for young men that have to go through a lot throughout their life and go through the struggles of, protecting, providing, and so on.
Understanding that you are in a tribulation has to make you thrive in life, has to make you work hard through it. I'll just add one last thing in this point. Another reason behind many things that happen to us is فبما كسبت أيديكم ويعفو عن كثير.
Allah.
Many things that happen to us in this life, in dunya, the reason behind it is the things that we do, is the mistakes, the disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we do. Some narrations mention that even headaches
Yeah.
As little as this.
Yeah.
Even headaches can be because something that you have done. At the same time, that this is bringing the punishment before the hereafter. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for some people to bring the punishment from the hereafter to this life. Why? يُذَكَّرُ بِهِ. In the narration it says, why يُذَكَّرُ بِهِ? To remind him that you did a mistake, that you have to do istighfar, that you have another chance, that you have a God to get back to. So even though it's a punishment, even though it's a way to remove the effect of your ma'asiyah wal-'iyadhu billah, and more than that, it is a reminder for you to get better. So all these reasons that we mentioned, and there are much more reasons in the narrations mentioned for bad things that can happen in this world, and it's our job and it's our tribulation to study the narrations and the verses, to understand the reasons, to get even emotionally to a better place, talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understanding Him and understanding this word.
May Allah bless you, Shaykhna.
And bless you too, Shaykh.
So the next question, I think it needs a bit of explanation as well. Do the Imāmiyya believe in the doctrine of divine simplicity?
Yes, Imāmiyya in the doctrines mention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not complex, we can say, is not compound. He does not consist of one or of two or more than two parts. And when I say parts, I want to explain it a bit. When I say parts, I mean that he is not an existence that to be existent contains two parts that are dependent on each other. Because every existence that has two parts dependent on each other cannot exist by itself. It should have a cause behind it.
So we're not with the whole anthropomorphism and tajseem.
Definitely, because see, anything that has two parts, anything that has time and space. See, if you say two parts, we cannot comprehend two parts without space. We cannot. Two parts mean space. Two parts mean a cause. Two parts mean depending on each other. Different points, if you think about it, just understanding that each part is depending, the part A is depending on B and part B is depending on A. Then can A and B exist without depending on anything else? Definitely no.
Okay, just quickly, let me intervene, just so that the viewers can understand divine simplicity or the doctrine of divine simplicity. Give it to us maybe in a few sentences, just so we can understand.
Sure.
It.
That's why I explained the parts.
Okay.
We are saying that this understanding of parts is connected directly to being caused. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be composed from these parts because He is not caused. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, and he wouldn't need to rely on different parts of his body or...
Very simple. So whatever understanding is related to Him having parts, it is wrong. Because it ends to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And we believe in this doctrine.
Definitely.
Okay. So this is getting to my next question. So there's an Athari polemicist, popular on social media. He argues that the doctrine of divine simplicity leads to modal collapse, removing God's free will. How? So basically, he says by that he's removing God's will. How does Shi'i thought reconcile divine simplicity with Allah's ability to act freely? That's a good question.
See, the question is based...
I'm praising myself, right?
The question is based on a philosophical understanding of cause and effect. And it is not based clearly on the understanding that our scholars in ʿIlm al-Kalām introduce in the relation between cause and effect. And I'll explain it in a bit. But even if we went through the philosophical way of thinking, I'm not saying that the conclusion is true. Even if we went through the philosophical way of thinking. But going through that path will take us to 1 more hour. So let's go to the direct path and the clear one first. What our scholars mentioned in the relation between cause and effect can be explained in this way. Actually, this is mentioned in the Kalami books earlier on, and this is mentioned later on. Sayyid al-Khoi, rahimahullah, had some words about it. Shaheed al-Sadr, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr also. Yeah? Yes. Shaykh Sadr had some words about it. If I'm not mistaken, Shaykh Sayyid al-Khoi was looking to what Shaykh al-Na'ini has mentioned even before him, even about this idea that I'll mention, but I'll try to explain it as it was closer to what's available in the Kalami books. And actually they wrote books in it. There is a book named Al-Mu'athirat wa Miftah al-Mushkilat for al-Rassas al-Zaydi. He explained this idea that I'll explain right now. They say that I'll say cause and effect, but then I'll change the words. I'll tell you why. The relations that we have are in 3 ways. The first one, illa wa ma'lul. Illa, so second one is sabab, third one is fa'al. Illa and sabab is translated very closely to cause. Fa'al is the doer, as they translated it as in some books, or the actor, the one who's doing the act.
By the way, Shaykh, even if you, because I know some words in Arabic, because of the power of the language, sometimes the one word needs a whole explanation. So if you want to do that, please do so.
Yeah, I'll explain them, but in summarized sense. So illa and sabab, I'll not go through them deeply because it does not affect our understanding here a lot. But they say that one of them is the cause of an entity, and one of them is the cause of an attribute. All right, illa and sabab.
Illa and sabab.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fa'il, they differentiated between him and illa and sabab because they say fa'il is the doer, the actor. What do they mean by the doer and the actor? See, al-Muqaddis al-Ardabili, he has a what's hashia, footnote? Footnote, okay. So he has a footnote on Kashf al-Murad of Allam al-Hilli. He mentions this nice example in there. He says, even if we could not answer the questions regarding free will and so on, although we can, but he says, even if we could not answer the question, if we got back to the self-evident truths that we know. He mentions this example, if I'm not mistaken, or something similar to it. He says, I can see very clearly that there is a difference between getting down on the stairs free-willed and falling on the stairs. So falling from a stair to another is very different than choosing to put my leg down one by one. Not in the shape, but in the understanding of how this effect is happening. He's saying that whatever problem, intellectual problem you'll arise in here, this is whatever intellectual problem you'll arise, I definitely know that until I put my leg on the next stair, is it right saying stair as a single of stairs? Okay. On the next stair, I know that it is in my will. It is in my capability fully. Shaykh Sadr says it's still in your sultanah, still within your authority. He uses a nice word. So even though you are a complete cause for it, but you are free-willed. That is what free-willed means. Imamiyya says in al-Kalam, ulama al-Kalam used to say that when we prove that something is free-willed, it means that he is the cause. He's not dependent on something. We are not waiting for the cause to be completed. No. You are the complete cause. And you are fully capable of moving your hand up. But still, you can choose to move it up or not. The word choose might give you a sense that choosing is the completion of the cause. No. You can, let's omit it. You can move it up or move it down. Or you cannot move it. Keep it as it is. And you are the full cause for that. And then when you say, then if you are the full cause, why did not the effect happen? They say because you are a free-willed cause. Actually, what they are saying is that causality is a self-evident truth. You comprehend it directly. You cannot prove causality. So when you want to comprehend and understand self-evident truths, you have to get back to yourself and contemplate. If we got back to ourselves, we understand that causality has at least two ways: automated way and free-willed way. You cannot treat all causes in the same sense.
Can you explain that?
Like fire and heat.
Okay, yeah.
Fire cannot control heat. If there's fire, there's heat. I mean the regular fire.
Yeah.
Studied chemistry, so I know the other types of fire. No, I'm saying the regular fire that we use for cooking. Okay. So fire and heat. Fire and heat are cause and effect. Fire does not have free will. But me and moving my hand, actually, to be exact, me and the first electrical pulse that will happen in my mind that then affects all the automated parts in my hand to go up. This me and the first electrical pulse, I'm free-willed. I'm here, I'm existing, I can create it and not create it. So they differentiate between a regular cause and a free-willed cause. And what the question is about is totally related to whatever, yani it's totally based on what is explained and shown in the regular causes.
I'm trying to see if the viewer will understand exactly how I'm trying to understand it. So, are you saying when Allah, for example, He created out of His free will?
Definitely. Do you know why?
And why does that not contradict divine simplicity?
Because the way that He causes His effects is He while being free-willed. Anyone who wants to show that divine simplicity contradicts this, he needs to prove it. But saying it out loud doesn't make it true. Even though He's simple, He's free-willed. See, let me tell you an example. This hand in here, without looking at anything other than it, I can say that it is a thing, and I can say that it exists without looking at anything else, right? Does this mean that this hand composes or is composed of two different things, existent and a thing, outside here? Definitely no. Every point in this hand is existent and is a thing in itself, right?
Yeah.
So being simple, so let's say the simplest point in my hand, the simplest amount in my hand, it is a thing and it is existent at the same time, without being composed of these two ideas. We can say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still simple, and he's still qadir, free-willed, he's still ʿālim, he has his knowledge without being composed of two different ideas. So saying that something is simple doesn't mean that you cannot comprehend more than one thing from it. Like comprehending existent and thing from one thing in the outside. Did you understand the idea?
Yeah, I understood the idea.
All right. So since he subhanahu wa ta'ala is simple, it doesn't contradict that he can, based on his knowledge subhanahu wa ta'ala, choose to create the world in a specific way with different existences in it. What is the contradiction? The one who is saying that there is a contradiction, he has to prove it.
Okay, Jade. I want to move on to the last question, and I think it's probably one of the most important questions. Okay. How do Shia scholars address the claim that if God's attributes are identical to his essence, this would make all his actions necessary and eternal, contradicting the Quranic notion of Allah creating the universe at a specific point in time?
This question is also based on what the last question
See,
is.
I told you I'm coming for you, Sheikh. Today, I'm not letting it go.
First thing, can you read the first part again?
How do Shia scholars address the claim that if God's attributes are identical to his essence...
Okay, until here, thanks a lot. When we say God's attributes are identical to his essence, we mean that he subhanahu wa ta'ala in himself do not need anything else to be able to choose. He himself as he is do not need anything else to be knowledgeable and so on. This is what we mean by that he subhanahu wa ta'ala, his attributes are identical to his essence. This is what was mentioned in the Shi'i doctrine from earlier books. There is a philosophical idea that was mentioned later on. Leave it in the philosophical research. I'm talking about what is in the books of Kalam right now.
Okay.
Okay? I just wanted to
Can you
explain
repeat that again?
What do we mean by what our doctrine is actually? Our doctrine regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes is this. He subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to choose, is all-knowing, is alive, is existent, and so on. All his attributes, he's attributed with all these attributes because of how he is in himself, not because of something added onto him. This is our doctrine regarding his attributes subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So you're saying this isn't that's where there isn't a contradiction.
Yes.
Jayed, okay.
That's why they say qadirun bidhatih. He's able to choose because of himself. Alimun bidhatih. He's knowledgeable because of himself.
Khaliq
is something else because
and fa'liyya.
Yeah.
Fa'liyya.
But and so on. Is it clear? I just wanted to explain the doctrine.
So you're
as the
saying
beginning.
the attributes of fi'l are different to the other attributes as well.
Yeah, definitely, because it's related to the fi'l.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the general attributes right now.
Okay.
This is the first point. Second point. Where the contradiction in the question occurs is if he is attributed with all his essence from the beginning, it means that's why I said the question is based on whatever the earlier question was based upon. It means that he's a complete cause. So if he is a complete cause, as many philosophers say, if he is a complete cause, the effect will be happening from the earlier times. It will not have any beginning. It will have been existing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is complete cause and he does not have a beginning, so his effect will be existing with him from the earlier times. Min al-qidam, without a beginning. And the answer is that is true if we base our understanding on what is mentioned in the philosophical research about causality. And we just mentioned that that in al-Kalām it is not accepted. It is said that causing something can happen in what is mentioned in causality. This is a cause, complete cause, affect our happening. Or you are a complete cause, but you are free-willed. So you can choose to make it whenever you want it. And here I want to mention something. See, if there was no two types of causes in existence, there is no way comprehended that there will be time and there will be today and tomorrow. And this is actually mentioned in the book of Kalam. They said, if it is true that if the complete cause happens directly, the effect happens, then you cannot explain. They usually mention this as a contradiction. You cannot explain as a refutation. You cannot explain that what happened today and what will happen tomorrow. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a complete cause. So He created the whole effect, right? Then this effect, does it need something else to create effect B? If it needs something else, this something else either is from God. If it's from God, it's created directly because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a complete cause. So it's created with it from the beginning. If it's not from God, it will not be created because there is no God but Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first effect should be also a full cause, a complete cause for the second effect, right?
Yeah.
And so on, it continues. So this effect A is a full cause for B. B is a full cause for C. C is a full cause for D. So what happened yesterday should have happened already from the beginning of time, because the full cause of it has happened from the beginning of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the full cause for everything. So everything should have happened from the beginning of time. Did you grasp the idea?
Yeah.
So nothing can be late. It has to happen all from the beginning.
Because of the cause.
Yes. And this in itself is a refutation, like the one that Muqaddas al-Ardabili mentioned of the differentiation between the walking down the stairs and falling upon them. This is another way that they use to open our minds, contemplate, get back to yourselves. There are different types of causing. There is an automated cause and there is a free-willed cause. We're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we're talking also about ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us free-willed. See, some things you cannot cause them, you cannot change them, but you know that your movement of your hand, you can cause it, and you know that it's in your sultana, as we said, Shaykh Sadr mentioned. It's in your hand at all times.
Beautiful.
And just the last thing to mention here. See, I know that we did not go deep to answer the philosophical ways to try to prove what they mentioned in the complete cause and the effect. And I don't mind getting into that in another chance. But I want to mention something. Sometimes you'll get a refutation or a way to try to contradict something that you see very clearly as a self-evident truth. Like if someone came to you, actually there's a joke usually mentioned, it's so good to mention it. The father met his son after years of studying philosophy, and then the father asked the son, "What did you study?" The son told him, "I can prove to you philosophically that this one plate in front of you is actually two plates." The father took the plate and ate it and told his son, "You eat the second plate." Whatever you do, I will not believe that there are two plates in front of me. I can see that it's one plate. Whatever proof you bring based on false premises, I might be at the moment not able to clarify the problem with your proof, but I know it is self-evident truth that I am free-willed. So even if you did not get a chance to understand what is the problem in the philosophical proof to try to show the problem of complete cause and effect, at the end, you have the self-evident truth in yourself. You know that you're free-willed. You know that you're a complete cause and the effect does not happen directly. You know that you have it in your hand to do or not to do. Just wanted to clarify that because some parts, we cannot go through everything in this. It's not short, but almost short discussion.
I think we've gone over 3 hours. But just to summarize, where would we start if someone wants to begin in ʿilm al-Kalām? What books to go through? I do feel, just before we finish off, one, ʿilm al-Kalām definitely needs a teacher. Like everything else, but ʿilm al-Kalām for sure. I feel like usul al-fiqh, you can read and so on. You need a teacher, but you can still grasp and take in a lot of knowledge by just maybe reading and so on. Of course, you'll reach a level where you're going to have to need a teacher. But I feel like ʿilm al-Kalām, no, you really need a teacher from the beginning, because these philosophical, rational questions and arguments can really lead you far away from the deen. So, what books would you recommend to begin with that really explain things in a very simple way as you're a beginner? And what advice do you have for the brothers and sisters just before we end?
See, it's better to get advice from someone else, but I'll try to, from good, knowledged scholars, but I'll try to just, say what I heard from my teachers, the scholars that I've met, the scholars that I got some understandings from, and so on. It's good if someone, but the problem is I don't have, I've until now I didn't read enough in English books and translated Arabic books. So I'll mention probably Arabic books.
Yeah, I mentioned Arabic.
One of the good books to start with are the two books of Sayyid Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim, rahimahullah.
Oh, okay.
Usul al-Aqidah, mainly. And to extend on some topics, you can read fi Rihab al-Aqidah with it, along with it. You don't even need to read it from the beginning to end. I found
them very helpful, them too.
But yeah, you can read it, especially if you have some questions you want to dive in more. You can read fi Rihab al-Aqidah with Usul al-Aqidah, but mainly complete Usul al-Aqidah. It's a very good book to start with. And
maybe it's a book we'll get some of the brothers to translate, inshallah.
Inshallah. And al-Mursal wa-Rasul wa-Risala for Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, adding on it a small introduction that he wrote on some other books, which is titled by Nash'at al-Shi'a wa al-Tashayyuʼ.
Hello.
Because al-Mursal wa-Rasul wa-Risala does not have the Imama doctrine in it. Adding Nash'at al-Shi'a wa al-Tashayyuʼ adds the Imama with the same way of
and that was done by him also?
Yes, by Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. It dives into Imama in the same way that he went to study al-Mursal wa-Rasul wa-Risala and the book itself.
I always say, by the way, well, I actually got this from my teacher. The same way you argue Tawheed, Nubuwwah, Imama.
Definitely.
Honestly. Because they're all connected.
Yeah, sure.
There's no way out of it. Yeah.
So al-Mursal wa-Rasul wa-Risala, and with it, the Nash'at al-Shi'a wa al-Tashayyuʼ is a good start. Then if you start, usually in the Hawza, and it's well known in Shia history that they start with studying ʿAlām al-Hilli books. They usually start with Bab al-Hadi Ashar and its explanations, because ʿAlām al-Hilli's books have many advantages. I'll just mention two in short. First one is that ʿAlām al-Hilli has a huge amount of books and a good amount of students that explained his books. So if it can help you understand a sentence that you missed, a sentence that you misunderstood or you did not understand, or you're having a hard idea to grasp, you can get it from different books in different ways. So this is an advantage in ʿAlām al-Hilli's books. Second advantage is ʿAlām al-Hilli, when he wrote his book, he was looking upon philosophical books and Kalam books. And he was looking upon some Ashāʿiri books, some Mu'tazili books, and Imami books. So it's a good introduction to the whole Kalam and Doctrine discussions and that we have. So starting with Allāma al-Halli, but with a teacher that really understands his Kalam books is a very good start.
Jameel, thank you, Shaykhna. Do you, just before we go, quick question. Do you think you have to study logic before you get into these books?
Well, see, at the end, I'm not saying that logic cannot be comprehended by itself. The premises of logic cannot be comprehended by itself if someone really was a good thinker. But there are some terminologies, thank you. There are some terminologies that are mentioned in the logical books, and also some ideas that are not easily grasped if someone kept thinking by himself and trying to build his logic without reading at all. So reading and studying logic books, even studying a short one, a short course in logic, but a good one, a good summarized short course is enough to start in studying Kalam and philosophy and so on.
Shaykhna, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
We took a lot of your time.
You're welcome. This is my obligation.
We had a few ups and downs. We argued. We went back and forth. I definitely learned a lot from this podcast. Definitely a very long podcast. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases you in knowledge, protects you, and blesses you, protects your family.
And you all, inshallah.
And honestly, having you in London is always amazing. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to keep on, allowing us to bring you here. And thank you so much for your time and for the podcast and for your knowledge. هذا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.